Well, I appreciate you doing the show today, Billy.
Sure.
So this is Billy Hattaway, everybody, professional engineer, and what's RSP1 again?
Road safety professional.
Road safety professional. You are a senior advisor with England, Timms, and Miller with 48 years of experience in the transportation industry. 48 years. You have a Master of Business Administration from Florida State University, go Knowles,
Yes.
and a bachelor's degree in civil engineering technology from Wentworth Institute of Technology. You're a registered professional engineer in Florida, Virginia, and Texas, and a certified road safety professional. During your time in the public sector, you were the transportation director for the city of Orlando. You are the former champion for both the Florida Department of Transportation's pedestrian and bicycle focused safety and complete streets implementation initiatives to improve pedestrian and bicyclist safety and comfort in the state of Florida, while also serving as FDOT's District 1 secretary. Now, District 1, where is District 1 exactly?
Just the 12 counties that make up Southwest Florida. So from Bradenton down to Naples and then halfway across the state.
And FDOT has 7 districts in
That's
Florida,
correct.
So you were the secretary for District 1. He has held several senior leadership roles in the private and public sector, including FDOT Director, Office of Design, State Roadway Design Engineer, District 5 Design Engineer, District 5 Structures Design Engineer, and an officer in the United States Air Force Reserves. You're also active in many organizations, including you are the chair of the board of the Florida chapter for Congress for the New Urbanism. Member Florida DOT, Motorcycle Safety Coalition, the list goes on. Urban Land Institute, Smart Growth America. For many decades, you've paid attention and have worked to develop public policy, state level initiatives, and now in the private sector to advance basically the way we live and traverse and gather goods and services across the economy.
Yeah, and to provide alternatives to the types of land development patterns that have been so dominant for the last 70 years.
And you being in this field for 5 decades, I mean, what a transformation we've had in this country of the gutting of our American cities, a flight to the suburbs, and
Yes.
now the resurgence of American downtowns.
Correct.
And how those two worlds conflict, especially at the policy level.
Yes.
And human culture and American culture always is in front of policy.
Yes.
And so the last decade or so, as people have moved back into their cities, Tampa included, Orlando included,
Yes.
these antiquated policies have held us back and actually been dangerous to the way we live in cities. And we'll talk about those details.
Sure.
But I really appreciate you being here, Billy. And you've sent me this interesting presentation that you said you've made
Yes.
several times. So David, pull that up and then tell me what the thesis of this presentation is.
So the thesis of the presentation is to educate professionals and elected officials on how things can be done differently from a transportation and land use standpoint. In Florida, the vast majority of our growth took place after World War II, but even more so when the theme parks opened in Orlando. And so the dominant development patterns have been suburban sprawl. And I wanted to, through this education work that I did, I made 150 presentations when I was secretary on a similar slide deck. This has been updated numerous times. But what I was trying to help local governments to understand is that they have a role with the land development patterns that contribute significantly to both the congestion and safety issues that we have on the network, on the roadway networks in the state of Florida. Because if you're cul-de-sacking every development onto the arterial system, which is a state or federal highway, then the state and federal highways end up paying for the capacity that ends up needing to be built to reduce congestion.
Isn't in some ways it's sort of obvious that if you build your communities in that manner where thousands of homes funnel to a singular road,
Right.
I mean, isn't that always going to increase traffic? Like,
Absolutely.
and so, you coming into your role at FDOT, were you surrounded by like-minded individuals, or were you in a place where you were kind of the forward thinker on your own island?
Yeah, so Back when I was a state roadway design engineer, this is when my passion around this issue really launched. Because back then, nationally, we were killing 40,000 people on our roads every year. 40,000 people, and we're back up close to that again. And from my perspective, that was not an acceptable cost. And so at the time, we put me and my team put a chapter in the Florida Design Manual, which is what our engineers use to design by, called the Transportation Design for Livable Communities chapter. That was the first venture into complete streets, and that was the intent of what I did. Out of the 7 districts, 1 district secretary supported that chapter, and the rest of them had no interest. Our state traffic operations engineer had no interest. So after 8 years of trying to advance that cause, I left the department. I got a master's degree, and I left the department and went to the private sector for 10 years. And it was during that time that I ended up working really all over the country with architects, urban designers, planners to basically help to redevelop downtowns and make them viable and successful again. And it was working with those folks on so many projects. I mean, I was working up and down the California coast. I worked on station area planning for the extension of the Phoenix Light Rail. I worked on a lot of projects and saw that if you get the right land development patterns, the transportation system will work more effectively, and it will be safer for pedestrians and bicyclists, and it will be more supportive to transit because you have to have some density for transit to work.
And these other secretaries in Florida that didn't want anything to do with these sort of new ideas, is it because they were much more senior than you? They were older than you at the time?
Oh yeah, probably. That may have had a lot to do with it. And of course, a lot of it has to do with your background. If most of the secretaries and even the people in leadership prior to me becoming the district design engineer had been roadway people. So they've been designing roadways their whole careers to add more capacity to reduce congestion without any real focus, meaningful focus on safety.
And that had been the status quo for a long, the entire
Nationally,
history,
the whole
nationally.
country, yeah.
Wow. And so how did you get that job if you sort of were,
I was a bridge engineer.
you were a bridge engineer? So is it an appointed position, or how does that exactly work?
Well, the district design engineer and the state roadway design engineer were both positions I applied for. Although the state roadway design engineer, I was actually asked by the chief engineer to apply for that position because he liked what I was doing in District 5 at the time.
So he was a forward thinker.
Yes, and he saw my leadership skills. So what I learned, being in the Air Force and being an officer, the training we got around leadership was 20 years ahead of the public and private sector. And so helping people to perform better and creating a great workplace became my focus in terms of leadership, and that's what they recognized at DOT, both the second and third time I was there.
And so when you were a secretary, did you go into the role immediately with this sort of forward-thinking hat on, trying to implement change? I mean, you mentioned, you think I said you did 150 of these presentations,
Right,
to try to show these alternative policies.
correct.
Sounds like you were very ambitious.
And to tell the public sector, including elected officials and professionals, where the agency was heading. So when the secretary, I was actually talking to the assistant secretary at the time, and he and I talked periodically, and he said, this is before I was hired. He said, you should consider coming back because Secretary Prasad wants to do the things you tried to do when you were the state roadway design engineer. So that obviously interested me. And even though it meant a big pay cut and me driving from Orlando to Bartow 5 days a week, I decided that the cost was worth it because if I had any opportunity to make progress on that front, I was determined to do that. And so I ended up being hired by the secretary, and the thing that he asked me to do when I came on board was to lead the safety initiative because of the 2011 Dangerous by Design report, which showed that four of the five most dangerous regions in the country were in the state of Florida. And,
4 of the 5.
And I was in Orange County or Orlando, which was number 1. So it was personal as well, right? And so when I came back, I worked with we had a number of staff in central office and the safety office that I worked with to develop the to develop the Alert Today, Alive Tomorrow campaign, which continues. And after I'd gotten that up and running, because we were meeting monthly to continue doing things that we needed to do, we had law enforcement. We had a host. We had 50 or 60 people meeting every month to improve safety on the state system. And many of the treatments that are now being used, like rectangular rapid flashing beacons and raised crosswalks, came out of that safety work. And then I went to the secretary and I said, Anath, we can't keep designing our roadways the way we have been for decades and expect different results. We need to change the way we design our system. And I talked to him about the importance of integrating land use and transportation, and that land use was a big part of the problem. And so Dwayne Carver in 2014 at the Pro Bike Pro Walk conference, we wrote the Complete Streets policy. And like anything, if a policy doesn't do anything if you don't do implementation, and we were extremely fortunate that I was at a meeting where Roger Millar, who was with the Complete Streets Coalition and had secured funding to help 2 other state agencies to implement Complete Streets. And I told Roger, I said, I'll be back in touch with you soon. And so they helped us to identify all the things that we need to fix in our standards and design manuals. And then the State Roadway Design Office, Michael Shepard, who was the State Roadway Design Engineer, was very supportive of this work. And so his consulting firm helped us to get all of that language into our design manuals. So we got this done in record time. And based on my conversations with the Complete Streets Coalition and Smart Growth America, no other state DOT has come as far as Florida has on that front in terms of guidance and dealing with the land development patterns in an effective way.
The land development patterns, along with the infrastructure regarding the streetscapes and the roads and all that, where did you get the idea that they're both directly connected? Is it someone you had followed in your studies, or did you see another locale around the country that really got things right?
I think there are a couple of things. I was in architecture for 3.5 years before I switched to civil engineering, and I was living in the North Shore of Boston and then moved into downtown and gave up my muscle car. So, because it would be a hassle to have a car in downtown. And so I used transit extensively. I walked extensively. And so it gave me an experience that most people in Florida don't have. So when I moved to Tallahassee and then living in Florida, I saw that that all of our cities had grown up really after Disney came to Orlando. And then during the time that I was working in the private sector after I left the DOT the second time, I was seeing that other states and other cities were redoing their street network to make them safer for pedestrians, but also to improve the potential for transit to work. So I was working on the extension of the Phoenix Light Rail. I was working all up and down the California coast and throughout Florida and the East Coast. So it showed me that cities that were willing to make those changes and require land development patterns to be more supportive to the transportation system and not put all the demand just on the transportation system, and having a mix of uses. A 10,000 home subdivision that has no amenities other than maybe schools, everybody has to leave the subdivision to get their basic needs met. And you contrast that with, for example, Baldwin Park in Orlando, which was an infill project. It was part of the Air Force Base and then the Navy base. It has 32 connections to the adjacent street network, and it has everything you need to survive, really, pretty much in Baldwin Park. So there's no 4-lane roadways in Baldwin Park and there's no signals except at the elementary school. And there's no congestion because there's so many ways for people to get in and out of the community.
The flow is unrestricted, right?
Correct.
So when you're developing this complete street policy and sort of in tandem working with local governments to implement their land development code to line up with FDOT's work on the roadways and all that sort of stuff, you kind of mentioned that there was pushback at your first stint with the state. This second go around, what was the feedback and what was sort of the arguments against implementing something like this?
Well, because I had two secretaries in a row that basically let me set policy and set the standards based on this, I got very little pushback except from the systems implementation staff who implement the interstate and the strategic intermodal system. And the big issue there was the minimum design speed. Our our policy back then was the minimum design speed on the SIS was 50 miles an hour. Well, that could be a road, and I'll use Fort Myers as an example. They had Martin Luther King Boulevard, which goes from I-75 into the downtown, was on the SIS because there was an intermodal station, and an intermodal station is a bus terminal basically that connects long distance trips to local trips. And because that was on the SIS, it was designed with a 50-mile-an-hour design speed right into the heart of Fort Myers.
What's assist?
Strategic intermodal system. It's supposed to be the highest priority system on the state. From my personal view is it never should have been used anywhere except on the interstate and toll roads, but unfortunately it was.
And so just simply because there was a bus terminal on this road,
Right.
even though it was through an urban area,
Right.
the minimum speed was 50
The
miles an hour.
minimum design speed was 50 miles an hour. So they wiped out half of this community when widening the roadway. And that's the kind of thing that I was struggling with seeing us do as an agency.
And so in only 2 years, you implemented these policies.
Yes.
Wow. And complete streets, so people understand. David, do you have on the slide deck? I think it kind of shows what a complete street is, because it's not, it includes roadway design. It maybe includes bike lanes and parking and pedestrian access.
Yes, exactly. And our focus, the complete implementation was really focused on improving safety. That was the key, because without this initiative and without fixing the land development patterns, it's almost impossible to create safe environments for pedestrians.
And then how does it connect to land development code? There's incentives built in place, correct? Where if a city has a land development code that is conducive to a complete street, FDOT will actually come into the city and redo the road for you.
Correct. They will use guidance based on the context of the built environment. So all this came from the Congress for the New Urbanism. It's called the Transect, which is a planning tool. And what we did, Dwayne Carver mainly, and Michael Shepard and me, what we did is we said, okay, we have to recognize that the Transect does not address suburban sprawl. It's only about developing communities the way we did before the car became so predominant. And so we had to take the Transect T3 or Context 3 now, and basically say, okay, anything in a C3, whether it's commercial or residential, is going to stay suburban sprawl unless local governments fix the land development regulations. And then the higher contexts, 4, 5, and 6, are all in a more traditional, what we would use the term traditional urban environment as opposed to conventional suburban sprawl.
So here in Tampa, like many Florida municipalities, we've got this sort of antiquated code, right? That's totally suburban. It was last comprehensively updated in, I think, 1987. And so Tampa's redoing its land development code entirely. So that sounds like an extremely great opportunity to line up
Yes.
with these initiatives at the state level.
Yes.
Where the city could actually get some, I call it free roadways, right? But it's never free, right? But state tax dollars to come in and redo these roadways in critical areas.
Sure.
Like I think West Shore, correct, is a state road.
And to use the standards that allow them, for example, to have 10-foot travel lanes because the speeds are low, and to have on-street parking. For years, we would remove on-street parking in downtowns to add more travel lanes. And so getting that on-street parking back is super important for the businesses that front that parking. But on-street parking is also one of the most effective speed management tools.
Yeah, like right over here on Cleveland, I wish they would have done the parking on the outside and the bike lane on the inside next to the sidewalk to protect the bikers. That would have been an interesting idea, but I'm sure there's a reason why they've done what they've done.
There could be, yeah, I'm not sure, yeah.
Right. And so with this document we're looking at here, this is a recent updated presentation.
Correct.
And this comprehensively explains your whole thesis about roadway design, community design, all of this sort of thing. And so
Funding of the transportation system.
funding,
That's an important element that people tend to ignore, especially elected officials. So in 1993, in 1994, when I was the district design engineer, the secretary came back from the executive workshop and she said, I've got some bad news and some good news. She says, the good news is that the feds have increased the federal gas tax. The bad news is that if nothing is done to index it to inflation or to increase it again, it will be bankrupt in 10 to 15 years. It was 14 years, 2008. Since then, general fund, not gas tax, general fund has supported the Transportation Trust Fund to the tune of $275 billion. About $20 billion a year is comes out of the general fund to pay for transportation, unlike in Florida where we depend totally on gas tax and license fees.
so we here in Florida have gas tax and license fees to pay for
Correct.
roads,
Correct.
etc.
And the Florida gas tax, a couple of years ago, the Department of Revenue projected that the Florida gas tax would peak in 2025, and then the ability to keep up with the demands would be going down every year. That's been extended out a couple of years, but it's another issue. And then local governments, the vast majority of local governments, which is a county initiative, have transportation taxes. Very few in the state of Florida have exercised that option. It's been on the ballots here in Hillsborough County and in Orange County, and it failed in both cases. Well, in Tampa, it didn't fail the first time. It passed, but then it was challenged.
And then ultimately failed
Correct.
At the Florida Supreme Court level.
Correct.
So, right, all of this stuff is fantastic in terms of the land development code, more conducive to a walkable urban area, especially when you talk about cities, along with these streets.
And transit.
But that's what I was going to say is you kind of have to have real transit go along with this to alleviate some of the potential reduction in traffic flow.
Yes, and cities bear the cost of transit typically.
Here's the thing, though. This city, much like many other cities around Florida and really around the country, in the last many decades were built to get people in a car from A to B, parked and out as quickly as possible, period.
Yes, absolutely.
Safety was not at the forefront, etc.
Correct.
But why did we still have traffic if that was the case, right? It's like you can kind of look at the whole thing and say, well, it didn't really work.
It's because the process that is used to fund highways, the highway system, is a long process, and developers can come in and build very fast. And with the construction techniques have advanced even more, that stuff goes up so fast now it's not funny. And there's no way that the state can keep up with that growth.
So you're never going to be able to build with roads your way out of this.
Never.
So it's a better policy to focus on the safety, to focus on some of the urban areas and walkability, get economic action, create a bigger tax base.
And get land development patterns fixed so that people don't have to drive everywhere for every need that they have to take care of. That's why I use Baldwin Park as an example, because you could live there and not leave the development.
What a concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a concept. When you look all across the world, that's how people live.
Exactly.
And when you look in this country, that's how people lived 100 years ago.
Absolutely.
I mean, Tampa, we've talked about a million times on the show, had 50 miles of streetcar.
Oh, yeah.
And you can look at an old picture of downtown Tampa, and you actually see more forms of transportation than you do today. You see people in cars, people on buses, people on streetcars, people on bicycles.
And walking.
And walking, too, as well.
Novel idea.
Right. Franklin Street was like our mall. People used to go Christmas shopping there. And unfortunately, throughout the decades, it's sort of been gutted, and now there's this resurgence. You have to imagine, now we have the advantage of hindsight.
Yes.
Now we can look back at these decades-old policies and understand what parts were good and what parts were bad.
Yeah.
And so complete streets and some of these new initiatives, it's almost a form of some old past ways of life.
What we call traditional development patterns, as opposed to conventional. development patterns.
Conventional being the more
Suburban sprawl, right?
suburban sprawl.
Yep.
Now the culture, right now the culture in November 2025 is further along in this direction of complete streets and this sort of walkability, pedestrian safety than it was when you first started at the state
Oh,
level.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Especially at the local level. Cities get this more so than counties because they tend to have downtown cores, and the business owners in the downtown core want to be successful, and in order for them to be successful, people have to live and function in the cities. And thankfully we have Jeff Finnick here in Tampa that's launched those projects that are basically, I mean, the demand to build more and more in downtown is pretty exciting to me.
Well, it's never been higher, really.
No, and Orlando is in bad shape from my view. The downtown is struggling terribly
Why would that be the case? Why would it be going crazy in Tampa and Orlando struggling?
because of the development that has come into Tampa between Daryl Shaw and Jeff, and that's created demand for more of the same. And Orlando just doesn't have anybody like that.
Created more of the same demand in terms of this dedicated urban neighborhood that has wide sidewalks and shaded streets
Yes.
and green space and storefronts and safe pedestrian access across the street.
Yep.
And neighborhood markets where people can gather. This energy, this life in this urban district.
Yes.
Versus
People want that. There are people that want that, even in Hyde Park.
Is that not
there
what
are
Disney
people that
World
want
is?
that. That's what it is. It's meant to copy traditional neighborhoods.
Isn't that kind of funny?
Oh yeah.
Really, how Disney World was developed to be like a walkable.
Like
I mean,
traditional
they have Main
developments.
Street right
Yes.
there, with the storefronts and everything. It's funny how we have it in this like fake version.
Correct.
But then literally Orlando itself is kind of far behind in that regard.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Now, do you see Orlando and frankly other cities in Florida having the same opportunity as Tampa in regards to this sort of new iteration of the American downtown?
Yes. In my district, in District 1 in Southwest Florida, the city of Sarasota was I would think my most progressive city in terms of the elected officials. Shortly after I became the secretary, they asked me to come to a council meeting. The city engineer did. And so I went to this meeting and they said, we want to take US 41, which goes from downtown out to the airport. We want that to be multimodal and we want to fix that. And part of what we want to do is to convert all the signalized intersections to modern roundabouts. And there's a good reason for that. It's because they're much safer. You don't have delay that you have with the signal, and they create much safer conditions because they eliminate the conflicts that are most common and cause the most serious injuries. And so I told the city, I said, let's pretend that I had enough money to fund all these conversions of modern roundabouts, and you were able to fix your land development regulations to be more urban. How long do you think it would take for the development to occur? And they said that would take a long time. And I said, yeah, that's right. And we don't have the money on top of it all. I said, but what I will do, I want the city to identify which intersections are the highest priority, and we'll focus on those first, and over time we will get this converted. Well, they actually ended up advance funding 2 of them, and then we reimbursed them. And the transformation that's happening in Sarasota is amazing. They get it, and they're doing the hard work. And there's other cities. Fort Myers was like that as well, and Venice. There's a number of towns along the West Coast, Southwest Florida, that get it and are doing the things that need to be done to fix their cities.
Interestingly, Sarasota is one of the best examples of a downtown in the entire state of Florida. The density that they've achieved,
Yep.
the beautification of the streets, some of the pocket parks.
Yep.
Their main street is just killer. They've got
Yep.
all the businesses back to back to back to back.
Yep.
And then you've got these interesting traffic ideas. Like David, type in UTC diverging diamond, diverging double diamond, right? Like when you get off the highway there, you go kind of
The
in
diverging
the oncoming
diamond interchange.
traffic lane.
Yeah.
You go onto the wrong side of the road and curve around. And then the other traffic lane does the same thing to get
Yeah.
onto the interstate and to cross I think it's University Parkway. They've done another one on Clark Road.
Yeah.
In your head, you go, there's no way this is more efficient. And then somehow
It
it
was the
totally works.
first, it's the
So
first one in the
look at,
state, and it
so
was
this
in
is,
my district, and it was approved when I was the secretary, and the secretary funded it.
so
Advance
this is
funded it.
directly under your efforts when you were at the Florida
Yes.
Department of Transportation here.
Yes.
Now look at this animation of how this thing works.
Yeah, it works.
Now, when this idea first comes up, what is the reception in this
Well,
traditionalist?
they'd already been built elsewhere, so we could show them models of how it worked, and the analysis showed that it worked. And I'm sure, I mean, there's always going to be skeptics. My biggest concern is the number of lanes that lead to this being needed to begin with. And I can tell you that when I was the secretary, a big part of the reason why this interchange had to be done was because of what I call interchange jumpers. They were going from Fruitville Road to this interchange, huge traffic volumes going just one interchange to go to work because there wasn't adequate network outside of the interstate to handle those commutes.
Well, Lakewood Ranch has had to build a few more north-south roads like Lorraine Road down south
Yes.
to connect, because when you're in Lakewood Ranch and you want to get out of Lakewood Ranch, really you've got I-75 on the western side,
Yes.
which only has, I think, 3 or 4 exits
Yes.
in the area.
That sounds about right.
And so, yeah, the only way to get across was to go under 75
Yep.
with the 6-lane road. So
Yep.
now what are we looking at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, you've got maybe 14
huge.
huge.
It's a huge interchange. It takes up a lot of land. It takes up less than a conventional cloverleaf, but it still takes huge amounts of land. And surprisingly, so Rex Jensen, who was the lead developer at Lakewood Ranch, he and I had a number of conversations about a model roundabout that we were proposing to put at the northern end of one of his development projects. And it took me a while to get him on board with the fact that we were going to do this, and we would work with him to try to do the timing and everything right. He ended up becoming such an advocate for modern roundabouts that he actually has a video online that DOT produced where he's supporting modern roundabouts.
Oh, wow. When you look at those old pictures at the kind of the onset of the full nationwide adoption of the automobile, you can see just these crazy kind of advertisements or initiatives, just different articles and publications where you see New York City with highways in the air.
Oh,
And
yes.
I think in the after the war, when people moved out to the suburbs and everybody had the house with the white picket fence with
Correct.
the family car, people would imagine it would be these 3D roadways everywhere. This kind of reminds me of that.
Yep.
And to your point about, it's like the fact that we even have to build this in the first place.
Yeah.
Kind of shows you that the path we're on regarding some of the suburban development, where you're bulldozing the pastures and the forests and the wetlands
And orange groves.
and all the above,
Yeah.
maybe that's not sort of sustainable. I think the state is going to have to recognize at some point you can't keep entitling 10,000 homes in Waimama.
Right.
You're going to have to allow some densification and
Yes.
some rebuilding of the urban areas of our
Yes.
cities.
And density doesn't have to be negative the way people think of it. It's not about having 6-story apartments everywhere. It's about having smaller lot sizes, for example. Right. I mean, the city of Tampa has something in spades that Orlando doesn't have, and that is a dense gridded network that goes on forever. And Orlando's does not, because it was a small town until Disney showed up.
Right.
So everything was suburban sprawl for the most part.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I also think Orlando doesn't have the level of urban decay Tampa did, because Tampa was developed much earlier.
Correct. And its core is very small.
Very small. Tampa, just pull up like a satellite image of the urban core of Tampa. When you look at an older picture from 100 years ago of the city of Tampa.
Oh, look at the grid. I mean, it goes forever. And
look at the grid, surrounded by water.
Yeah.
Massive, one of the largest, I think maybe the largest historic district in the state of Florida, Ybor City attached to it.
Wouldn't surprise me.
But what my point was, though, the amount of land that was bulldozed and scraped up through urban renewal,
Sure.
although, horrible for a bunch of different reasons, but it's lended these insane opportunities today. You
Yes.
couldn't build gasworks in Water Street if you didn't have the urban decay.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, although you've got these projects planned, like the Central YMCA, which Ellison's doing, and
Yeah.
SPP with its future phases of Water Street, Gasworks, and everything happening in Ybor with
Plus, all the
Darrell,
surface parking lots are in the
that's what I'm
process of
saying.
being
Add
developed.
all that up, and
Yeah.
you've got the environment, the fabric,
For a very vibrant downtown. Extremely so.
may be legitimately the most opportunity of any city in Florida to really get it right because you
I
have the
think so.
space.
I think so. Then Jacksonville can't because it's incorporated the whole county, and whereas here, that thankfully we did not do that. And I feel like that we moved here 4.5 years ago, and I feel like our timing could not have been better in terms of having a vibrant downtown. Whereas Orlando, we lived downtown Orlando, and it was not a vibrant downtown except around Lake Eola,
Right.
and that was it.
Right. And it's, you know, it's all, I think one thing that Tampa has to be thankful for, you said it earlier, is the private sector demand.
Yes.
I think cities all across the country are so hungry for private sector demand.
Yes.
And over the last really 20 years, there's been this emphasis with every administration on Tampa's downtown.
Yep.
And you can see the result of that. And with what these large developers are doing and some of the small projects happening, yeah, you know, the hard part is solved for, which is the private sector. What we need to figure out is in the public sector, the land development code, continuing to rebuild the infrastructure, and kind of looking at everything holistically and saying, what did this look like, you know, 100 and something years ago when you had the streetcar network, right? When you had all Central Avenue used to have a ton of shops on it,
Oh,
right?
I'm sure. Yep.
And when you look at old pictures of Tampa, you can kind of see how dense it used to be.
Yep.
If, you know, really, if you were to rebuild the city, and I'm not even advocating for, like you said, 6-story apartment buildings or even more skyscrapers. Like if you just kind of took what we used to have 100 years ago and you were able to preserve some of the areas out in Hillsborough County, that sounds like a better long-term strategy than keeping the urban area suppressed with antiquated policies,
Right.
and entitling another 5,000 homes out in the county.
Right. That
You know, all
can't.
those people want to come to the city for lightning games.
Oh,
You know, it's
absolutely.
like you're going to get that traffic and you're going to get those people to come here no
Yep.
matter what.
And schools are still important. You know, that's a lot of things get driven by quality of schools. And I mean, St. Pete's another good example of a city that gets it and has done a lot to fix their urban fabric. And it's definitely happening here in Tampa as well.
Yeah, big time. I mean, St. Pete has, I think, surpassed Tampa, far beyond Tampa in so many ways. I mean, what they've done with that downtown Central Avenue,
It's
the
amazing.
waterfront,
Yep.
kind of in the same way we talked about Sarasota, right?
Yep.
They've looked at what they have.
Yes.
You know, they're not trying to figure out, like we talked about offline, where can we incorporate? You know, what can we bulldoze to add more of the
Sure.
city? What little town nearby can we incorporate? No. Let's look at what we have.
Invest in what you already have. Yeah.
Exactly. And St. Pete's the perfect iteration of that. And
Yep.
it is impressive.
It is.
You know, the other thing about St. Pete too is the support of small business they have. You know, it's not like it's Starbucks on every corner.
No.
You know, they've done a fantastic job of allowing small businesses to come in.
Absolutely.
Every little coffee shop, every
Yep.
little weird boutique and
Yep.
kava house, and,
Oh,
and
yeah.
all these different things are so creative.
Yeah.
You know, the different operators they have over there, it's impressive.
It is. That just the number of restaurants is really amazing to me. My brother moved over there, and he's right across the street from the park on the water. So he is living in the urban environment.
So, David, can you go back to slide number 2 on the presentation we had? I definitely want to roll through the agenda, at least. I know maybe we can't do this entire presentation on air right now. Plus, we don't want to do a slideshow on a podcast. Right? That wouldn't be very fun. So we kind of talked about a little bit how we got here, right?
Yeah.
But do you want to walk through the general themes
Sure,
here and then talk
sure.
about what we can do to fix it
Yeah,
all?
because part of what I do with the How We Got Here is to help people to understand why things are the way they are and what are the negative implications of the historic land development patterns in the state of Florida. So I actually took this young woman, a picture of her. She was on Fowler Avenue.
Wow.
And back when I took this picture, when I was the state roadway design engineer, there were not sidewalks on Fowler. There are now. And she was walking her twins because that was the only option she had.
She's got her high-vis vest on.
She got her high-vis vest on, yes.
Which,
and this is everywhere in Florida.
well, I was
everywhere.
going to say, in my neighborhood,
All the
in
arterial
South
system.
Tampa,
Yeah.
we have infrastructure issues that are being worked on, and there's been improvements since I've been living down there. But you know,
Gotcha.
just on the weekend, walking with my wife and
Sure.
my kids, you know, as a new father, I have a 2.5-year-old now. You really start to pay more attention to your
Oh, yeah.
surroundings.
Yeah.
And when your neighborhood has no curbs and the sidewalks are broken and there's no crosswalk,
Right.
you know, you as a dad, I'm like, okay, go ahead and go. Cars
Sure.
are coming. You know, it doesn't produce a good feeling or a good quality of
Well,
life.
you have to be on edge all the time.
You got to be on edge all the time.
Yeah, I have 4 grandkids, and the youngest, we have to watch him like a hawk because the first thing he'll do is run out in the road on their neighborhood.
And it all funnels
In
down
South
to
Tampa.
infrastructure
Yep.
improvements.
Yep,
I mean, with
absolutely.
infrastructure improvements, you could solve for that.
Yep. Yep. And then this is so all of the state agencies use the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials. It's called the AASHTO Green Book, and this language was in the AASHTO Green Book for years. Every effort should be made to use as high a design speed as practical to achieve a desired degree of safety. So most engineers would not, if they were going to post a roadway for 45, they would design it for 55.
They would just read the first part of the
Yeah,
sentence.
yeah. And versus the second half, which came about as a result of our change in policy.
Picking a desired speed based on the built environment.
Right.
Compact, urban, suburban, rural.
Which is what we used as the classification system. And then this just shows the implications of speed and fatalities. And the thing I point out here is what is the posted speed limit in almost all of our suburban neighborhoods?
It's got to be 40,
No,
right?
it's 30 miles an hour. But if you get hit at 30 miles an hour, you have a 50% chance of dying. And what happens if you don't die is chances are you'll end up with a life-changing disability of something. And so this shows 2 things, the risk of death based on speed, but it also shows what happens to your ability to process information based on speed. Our bodies and vision are not designed to operate at 60 or 50 miles an hour. And so our brain starts shutting down the edges of our vision as we drive down the roadways.
It's interesting too, because the faster you go, the more boring the road becomes. Meaning, if you're on an interstate highway
Right.
and you're going 80 miles an hour, I think what's the highest speed limit in Florida? 70,
70,
right?
yes.
People typically go 75, 80, right?
Oh, yeah,
But when
every
you're
bit.
going that fast,
Even faster.
when you're going that fast, how easy is it to zone out?
It is.
You're not even.
Yeah.
The
And with
idea that
distractions.
you would look for a human being like someone on the roadway is
Right.
almost zero. You're not
That's
even
true.
thinking about that.
That's very true. And then this just illustrates the traditional neighborhood development patterns with suburban sprawl, where, first of all, everything is cul-de-saced onto the arterial and all the uses are separated. So you can see there's housing as one cul-de-sac, apartment complex is another cul-de-sac, maybe a school, but every single trip has to go out on the arterial. Contrast that with how our traditional towns and cities were built. Not only did you have a dense network of streets like we have here in Tampa, but you also had smaller block sizes and you have a mix of uses. I mean, where we live, we can walk to our Publix. It's 2 blocks away and it's a very pleasant walk, or we can walk to Bayshore and then walk on Bayshore. And if you have if a crash happens in that kind of network, there's lots of ways to get around. If there's congestion, there are ways to get around. We had when I was in district in the city of Orlando, we had a bad crash at the entrance to one of our cul-de-sac neighborhoods, and then there was a medical emergency inside. They actually had to helicopter in because they could not get past the crash because it was one way in and one way out. And that's very typical of what these developments end up like.
And this is done, we're not talking about Florida. This really has been done all
Oh,
over
it's
our
everywhere.
entire nation.
It's everywhere. Yeah. And this just illustrates if you lived in that residential neighborhood, wanted to go to a movie, how would you get there from here? You got to cross a freeway, which has probably very few exits. It's a toll road on top of it, which means it has very few exits. And you got a office park, quote unquote, office park in between. No telling how far you would have to drive to get to the movie theater.
And as the crow flies, it's maybe, a quarter mile, but it's going
yeah.
to take you 20 minutes to drive.
And this is in Orange County, and I've used this slide. I stole this from another new urbanist. But there's two homes that are 70 feet apart, but it's a 7-mile drive to front door. So think about with our delivery services in these days, the post office, service vehicles to service the neighborhoods. You go into one neighborhood, now you got to drive 7 miles to the other neighborhood just because there's no connectivity requirements between neighborhoods.
Do you think that there's been a distancing in our ability to connect to one another in American culture because of the way our lifestyle has been designed through this suburban style living in cities, but also out in the country and in these suburban areas? Like, my great grandmother would tell me stories of owning this hardware store, and she walked down the street and you see the family that owns the grocery store, the baker, and it's like everyone was so engaged with one another and everyone knew everybody. And because of that, the voter turnout was 80%. And I'm looking out for my own business, but I also care about your business. You supply me things, I supply you things.
Yep.
And it seemed like American culture was just in general was more cohesive, and people paid a lot more attention to their own community. Do you think, one thing I've been thinking, and do you sort of see this, where this example right here, where you've got two homes 70 feet away, but it's a 7-mile drive, those people aren't going to ever know each other.
No, the backdoor neighbors, they probably don't even know the people that live on the other side of the fence from their subdivision, because it's 7 miles, unless they throw their kid over the fence.
Do you think the way our lives have been designed through this style of living has affected the way we're connected politically?
Absolutely. And I'll use our time in Houston, Texas. We lived in Houston, Texas for a couple of years. I was recruited out there when I was a structural engineer. And we lived in a subdivision that had 4 distinct neighborhoods in the subdivision, and they were all separated based on price point. So everybody was stratified into their basically economic group.
And you never necessarily had to interact with people of a different income than you.
Right, exactly.
Whereas in a place like New York City, the least fortunate and the most fortunate, or downtown Tampa, sure. And
or
an
even
urban
South
area,
Tampa is the same way.
Sure. The people that are the most fortunate and the least fortunate are on the same sidewalk.
Right.
So what do they care about? The same policies.
Absolutely.
The same infrastructure.
Yep.
Whereas this, you're only worried about what's in your own, on your
backyard.
own street or in your own backyard.
Yeah, exactly.
So next slide.
And this has been every bit of suburban sprawl is just like this, and likewise with school sizes. I walked to school. I walked to high school. I walked to elementary school in Orlando. I walked to high school when I lived on the North Shore of Boston. And over time, basically, the schools have become a huge congestion problem because everybody drives their kids to school. And so you have lines backed up down the street many times with people waiting to drop their kids off or pick them up at the end of the day.
So some of the statistics here, in 1969, almost half of students would walk or bike to school.
That would have been me. I graduated in 1970 from high school.
And in 2009, less than 8% walk or bike to school. Also, since World War II, the number of schools have declined 70%.
Yes.
While the average school size grew 5-fold from 127 students to 653.
Oh, yeah.
So you've had this institution kind of grow where we're feeding children into these systems and dumping them out without necessarily digging into the neighborhoods, having more schools, smaller class sizes, people
and there's a cost.
Walking.
Yeah, and there's a cost to that, I'm sure.
Well, look at our education system in this country.
No question.
It's interesting, kind of like we just talked about 5 minutes ago, where it's like it's all connected. Like the very fabric of our reality, how we are designing these cities and suburban areas, is directly connected to education, to small businesses, to the transportation initiatives we've so desperately tried to achieve here for the last 30 years. It's like the very foundation of reality itself, like how people move goods and services
Oh,
across the
absolutely.
fabric,
And it's changing every day,
it's
even
changing every
today.
day.
And we have generations of people who have never lived in anything but suburban sprawl.
Generations.
Generations.
And whenever I post of an alternative solution or a different way to think about these things on my platform, there's always a crowd of people that can't imagine life
Correct.
being another way,
Correct.
even though they're sick of sitting in traffic.
Yep.
They're sick of driving 15 minutes to get a stick of butter.
Yep.
You know, it's like they have these grievances, but they don't necessarily know how to
They don't
solve
see
for
any
them
way out.
because that's the way they've done it. And
Correct.
their fathers
And
have
their
done
parents
it.
have done it. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So look at this picture here. You know, how often do you see this?
There's a lot of that in Florida. That's actually in Fort Myers.
Fort Myers.
Yeah.
And we've came a long way, I'd say, in the last decade or so.
Yeah.
Sounds like thanks to initiatives by
Yeah.
you and your office.
Yeah.
So
And the
dangerous.
state, and I was very fortunate to have two secretaries in a row that basically let me set policy and set standards for DOT.
Yeah.
That's why there was not a lot of pushback. Not when I was there, and when I left, some people showed up and started expressing opposition to complete streets.
And due to what reason, if the results were positive?
Because they didn't make an investment to understand what we were trying to do from a safety standpoint, or just to provide choice. I mean, this is really about providing choice and at the same time improving safety.
So you started off with these alternative solutions in an education fashion. You know, you're presenting this document or these
Images.
materials 100+ times.
Oh, yeah.
You're educating local elected officials,
Still doing it.
staff, still doing that, of
Still
course.
doing it.
But initially, it was to allow them to understand these alternative
That DOT
policies
was launching.
that
Yes.
DOT was launching. But now there's almost been a regression, would you say?
In some areas of the state, but not everywhere. In the cities, I mean, cities by and large still get it.
Cities by and large get it probably because they're forced to get it, because we have to live with our decisions
Yep.
in a fabric that's been here for 120 years.
Well, and the downtown stopped working because of suburban sprawl. So they've realized that doing what they've been doing has not worked. So they had to change the way and it's all about having people live in the city.
And if you have a new home community of 1,000 homes out in the middle of nowhere and you bulldoze a forest, you sort of have the luxury, I'll say, of doing things the way they've been done, because why do it a different way? You've got the land for it.
Exactly.
You've got the space.
And it's cheap, and it's cheaper to live in typically.
But certainly not sustainable.
I mean, I use Baldwin Park repeatedly because it's so well done. When I was at the city during COVID, and of course the recession as well, and because of COVID, and Baldwin Park was the last development to stop building, and they were the first out of the ground at the end of that time.
So what's the experience like at Baldwin Park? I mean, when I'm in that little Main Street area, or if I live 3 blocks away,
Right.
How does it differ from if I live in downtown Orlando?
So, it's a mix. They have a mix of uses, and it's all different types of mix of uses. And they have every school from preschool all the way through high school in Baldwin Park. Whereas in downtown Orlando, we subsidize the Publix, the one Publix that's downtown. It's very popular. That's where we shopped. But you don't have the kind of shops in downtown Orlando. I mean, there's more bars than anything, and that was one of the things that we were trying to correct at the city with the downtown master plan, which I helped fund. So they're going to convert the one-way pair of roads that go through downtown back to two-way, and add more on-street parking, and try to help those businesses to come back other than bars. Bars and fast food is about all that's there.
Is all of the effort in hopes of generating demand through the private sector to come and build these developments and have small businesses come?
Yes, in fact, many of the property owners that we met with before we did the master plan told us they wanted to get out of the bar business.
That's encouraging.
The actual property owners, we met with a large group of them.
Entertainment certainly plays a role, but the problem we have here in and Ybor, and frankly on Howard Avenue is it's one note,
Gotcha.
and it's really not good overall for the community to have one lane of things to do.
Gotcha.
And it also rubs up against the community, especially on Howard Avenue.
Sure.
I mean, if you have this dense area with loud bars, but then you've got people and homes living behind them,
Adjacent.
that's
Yeah.
not necessarily the best for everybody overall.
Correct. Correct.
A much more approachable solution for everybody would be a good mix of everything,
Correct.
not just one thing.
Correct.
Yeah, downtown Orlando is sort of this notorious, after midnight
Oh yeah.
hangout,
Oh
always
yeah.
problems,
Oh yeah.
police,
Big time.
I've
And it's been that way we lived there for 14 years in our most recent time, and it's been that way ever since we moved there.
when you say the Publix in Orlando is subsidized,
Hmm.
what does that mean?
Well, to get them to come in initially, we had to help subsidize the project. I don't know to what degree, but to get them to actually come into that ground floor of that condo building that was built, that it was part of.
There wasn't enough natural demand for grocers to say we want in.
Correct.
Wow.
Well, there wasn't enough people living there. Like, we lived in a residential neighborhood not quite a mile from downtown, and we had two public stores that were much closer to us than the one on Lake Eola. But once that opened, that's the only one we went to pretty much.
David, can you pull up Baldwin Park? So I know you're getting ready to shoot, but if you don't mind, so we can talk about that, because you've
Sure.
referenced it a couple times.
Yeah.
Baldwin Park is the name, correct?
Yeah, because it's one of the best examples of new urbanism in the state, and it's very, very successful. And when you go there, I mean, the things that the developer did were very unusual. That land was covered with live oaks everywhere, and they literally dug up live oaks, stored them in an area, and then put them back. So when you go into Baldwin Park, the oak trees are spectacular. Mature live oak trees. Yeah, it's amazing.
And you also notice all these connections, like
And
your
neighborhood parks.
your traditional planned large development like
Yeah.
this outside of an urban center would not be built with all these access points. It
No.
would be built with a big gate in the front.
Yeah,
And so the
exactly.
way they've done this is they've connected it to the surrounding grid.
The surrounding network, yes.
And they have the luxury also of being a new community,
Yeah,
meaning they were able to plan and
Yeah.
set the roads, whereas downtown Orlando has work to do in realizing you kind of are left with what you have. How
Right.
do you encourage that private
Yeah,
development?
getting rid of the one-way pairs helps tremendously.
I think actually Greg Slater was on, and they talked about they're going to two-lane Borain, if I'm getting that name right, right up here. That's the bridge north of the Platte Street Bridge that connects kind of where we are in the UT area over to downtown.
Gotcha.
And if that was two-way, you can imagine, given enough time and the right incentive structure, where you've got shops and restaurants all along that corridor,
Yep.
wide sidewalk, and that kind of becomes like a new little district within the
Sure.
city.
Oh, absolutely.
So this Baldwin Park, what's the kind of genesis of this development? Where I think you mentioned it was a military base.
This was part of McCoy Air Force Base. I think it was housing back when I grew up in Winter Park and Orlando, because we lived not far from what is now Baldwin Park. And then the Navy came in as a naval training center, and then they shut down the naval training center. Basically, it's where people went to go to basic training. And so the city had the opportunity to do this redevelopment. And at the time, the mayor was Glenda Hood, and she was the one with the staff that she had on board at the time who understood that they needed to do things differently. And so that's the result. Baldwin Park is a result of that. And in addition, the other thing that worked out well for the city was that the developers had developed Celebration, and they learned a lot from doing Celebration, and they fixed the things that they had done wrong. And those are their terms, that they had done wrong in Celebration. They fixed those. The one mistake they made was that they did not control the commercial properties, and so there's one big lot on the main street that has stayed empty for years, and it was because they did not keep control of the commercial properties. They had done that in celebration to decide they didn't want to do that again. But after they did Baldwin Park, they wished they had not done that.
And so
That
another party owns the lot and
Yep.
is basically
And
sitting on it.
it's just a grass lot, and it's pretty big, and it's on the main street going into Baldwin Park. You can't miss it. It's an entire block.
So when you look at the satellite of this development, Baldwin Park, you kind of see it has a downtown, if
Yep.
I can use that
Has a
word.
main street.
It has a
Yep.
main street.
Yep.
And then you've got, it looks like multifamily around it.
Yep.
And then it has more intense like duplexes and quadplexes. And then as you go outward, it's got single family homes.
Correct. And in most of a large number of the single family homes have accessory dwelling units too.
Wow. And
over their garages. So
do you know the price range in here?
I don't anymore. I used to at one time. It's not cheap because you get what you pay for.
You get what you pay for.
And you get a lot of amenities here. And they do have like a homeowners association.
And
you're
sort of buying into this lifestyle, right?
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
Why am I going to pay sort of extra money, or more money to live here rather than somewhere else? Well, you can walk your kids to school. You can walk to the grocery
and
store.
they're all A-rated schools too.
Right. And it's safe and it's pristine and it's well designed.
Yep.
And you've got your own little main street and you don't have to necessarily drive into downtown.
No, you don't.
You've got your own community.
A lot of
commercial.
people, in fact, kids bicycle on the main street, which you would never see in most places.
Can you imagine trying to bike downtown Orlando on one of those busy roads, or even any downtown?
Only during the off peaks.
Exactly. So that's the other thing too, right? Like this is sort of linked with affordability. Now, I'm not going to say I'm assuming some of the homes are a couple $1 million. Like
Oh
the
gosh,
largest.
yes. Oh yeah. They've
easily,
got some
right?
very expensive homes. In fact, what's interesting to me is that the main street coming into the downtown center has some of the biggest homes on where most of the traffic is. They have these large homes on
Right
the,
here
on
where
the
it act-
boulevard.
Yeah, go up there,
On
David.
the boulevard coming in, and you can see there's a
On the
park.
lake.
There's a park actually in the middle of the street there, because it bifurcates to go around what is actually a retention pond, but it's treated like an amenity instead of like
These.
fenced out. Yeah,
Look how
those
large
homes are
those-
huge.
Okay, so I said $1.5 million. Those are probably more like 4 plus, right?
Four plus
But here's the
every
thing:
bit.
that's not for everybody, right?
No,
That's for that
no.
particular buyer.
Correct.
Absolutely gorgeous. Look at another thing too is the unique architecture.
Oh yeah,
It looks like they've let people and home builders push
yeah.
the envelope.
They're not all they don't all look the same. No, that's definitely the case. In
mean,
fact,
you've got
it was
traditional-
a requirement, and you can see they have on-street parking. The only thing I don't like about this main street
Sure.
is the bike lanes next to the door zone of cars, and that's something that at DOT we would recommend against.
But everything else they got right.
Oh yeah, that's one minor thing.
So
in the scheme of
on
things.
affordability, you would imagine if you rented one of those apartments at market rate, and would you even have to own a vehicle? I mean, not really. If you
It
didn't
depends on
want
where your
to.
job is.
Sure.
Because like there's cops that live in these neighborhoods in the less expensive areas of Baldwin Park.
So in your mind, this is one of the, if not the best example of
Of a major development in the state of Florida,
wow.
because it's a major development, and they've got pretty large apartment buildings and condos now on the lake, which you saw in the background.
So this has the surrounding area. Are you familiar with what the surrounding
Oh
area?
gosh, yes.
is?
Yeah, I lived. I mean, I used to my junior high school was relocated across the street into Baldwin Park
Oh, wow.
off of Glen Ridge Way, and we used to live not a mile from there.
So-
So yeah, I was very close to this area.
In Tampa, I'm imagining an area like Sulphur Springs. There's a lot of city-owned land. There's the old dog track. David, if you can pull up the satellite, there's the city right now is talking about a redevelopment of that area. One of the really the largest, absolutely, and maybe one of the only concerns is how do you not completely disrespect the people and the businesses that are currently there and that have been there for a long time? Meaning, not everyone's going to be able to afford that full $1 million home.
Right, and part of the challenge is that there's not enough of this kind of development. So it's basically a supply and demand problem. If if all the development in Orlando was being done like Baldwin Park, Baldwin Park would have competition and would not likely be as pricey as it is. But because there's no alternative, that's why it's just like South Tampa.
Right.
South Tampa is what it is because it's been that way for a long time, and because the city has a really great grid, there's lots of opportunities to live in other areas, especially some of these areas that are redeveloping, and they're starting to build homes that are more suited to people's wants and needs in this day and age.
Most of the demand, easily 90+% of the demand for the high end homes was always in South Tampa.
Yeah, I'm
You
sure.
now have a new community. If you zoom out, David, kind of in the larger urban core of the city of Tampa,
Yep.
you've got these other alternative areas where people are paying over $1 million for single family homes.
Yep.
And it's directly north of downtown in Tampa Heights and Riverside
Yep.
Heights. And the data is clear. You can actually, more homes over $1 million and this is not including some of the suburban areas that have
Sure.
been annexed, like
Sure.
Tampa Palms.
Yep.
But more homes over $1 million have been sold in Riverside Heights than any other area of the
Wow.
city outside of your traditional south of Kennedy, South Tampa
Wow.
market. And that tells me that the demand is there. Like someone who wants to spend that kind of money,
Yep.
that doesn't necessarily, well, let's just say that can't afford now to be in South Tampa.
Right.
They want to get a brand new home, but
Yep.
they can't spend $2.5 million.
Right. Exactly.
But they can spend $950,
Sure.
$1 million too.
Sure.
They are going to this really, really cool area north,
Yeah.
kind of west of the urban core.
Yeah. We rented up there when we first moved here.
Super cool area.
Yeah, it is.
Super cool area, but it
Yep.
needs a little more commercial space and dedication.
Agreed.
It needs some of those coffee shops and some of
Absolutely.
those neighborhood amenities. Not
Yep.
everyone can get in a car and go park at Armature Works
Correct.
for an hour to get a coffee. It's like that. So here's my kind of question about the city of Tampa, how it relates to Baldwin Park and these other development styles, these planned communities. Because Tampa has such a fantastic grid.
We have the great bones here.
We have the great bones.
Yes.
And so my question is, can you develop Tampa in a way like Baldwin Park, but a citywide approach where every neighborhood can have its own version of Hyde Park Village? I'm not talking price level.
Of
I'm
course.
talking in general. I'm talking about a corner
small
store.
shopping. Yeah, small shopping, small restaurants. I mean, even in Orlando, downtown Orlando, there's still some of that, but you have to have land development regulations that encourage that. Or
Does
else
it
it's
start
not
with
gonna
that?
happen. Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, because if there's one thing developers and business owners don't want to deal with, they don't want to have to deal with a lot of bureaucracy.
Right.
They don't want to have a battle to do something that's good for the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so that's why the land development regulations are so critical.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm developing a little neighborhood commercial spot in Riverside Heights. And the process to go through everything with the city and the codes and then the money.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the budget we're looking at is like $700,000, right?
yeah.
Plus what I paid for the building.
Sure.
Plus, the business is going to have to come in and do a build out.
Yep.
Before you serve a cup of coffee, you're
Oh,
in
I
this
know.
thing for like $1.5 million.
Oh, easily.
And so my fear is that if we don't think about a more methodical way to implement these land development codes, again, we have an antiquated code from the late 1970s
Sure.
or 1980s. We're redoing it now. But if we don't get it right, we're only going to be left with like Chipotle and Starbucks, because these big national tenants, they've got the attorneys and the money, and if they want to be in a market, they will wait for it.
And they will also require extensive parking. I'll give one example, a couple of examples in downtown Orlando. We were a few blocks away from this corner store that had been historically a corner store, and people came in and bought the place, and they fixed it up, and they basically made it like a little outdoor cafe and a corner store both, and people loved going there. I mean, they'd be sitting outside on a day like this. They'd all
Yeah.
be sitting outside having lunch, but it closes at like 6 o'clock, so it's not creating issues for the people
Sure.
that live there.
Sure.
So there are things that you have to be aware of, that when you're going to bring business into a residential area, you got to recognize that there may be pushback if it's not done properly.
Big time. And I
Yeah.
think that that's biggest conversation to have in Tampa, and really
Yeah.
this is applicable to any city, of
Oh,
course, for that matter.
absolutely.
But how do you not intensify the use of your commercial corridors to where it reduces the quality of life for the neighbors that have been there for a long time, or the neighbors that have lived there for a short amount of time, right?
Sure.
Just neighbors in general. The last thing I or most people would want to do is disrespect a community and put something
Yes.
that doesn't belong. And then
Right.
you got a line of cars down the neighborhood street,
Yes.
and you've got people,
Like a Starbucks.
a Starbucks, right? But
One model.
there's got to be a good balance of both.
Yeah.
When I go to my little local coffee shop in my neighborhood, South of Gandy Cafe, I'll sit there with my wife and my children, and I'll look like you get this vantage point. It's on the corner of Inner Bay and McDill,
Oh, yeah.
and I see, a little
I know
family, a
exactly
mom and
where
her
you mean.
stroller coming across from the north, and then
Yeah.
you see from the east, from Ballast Point, people
Yeah.
walk. It's like people are congregating in these little commercial areas
Oh,
and
yeah.
choosing to walk.
Yeah. Oh,
I can just tell
absolutely.
there's a craving in the culture,
There's
at
no
least here in
question.
Tampa, where
There's no
people
question.
want neighborhood commercial amenities.
No question.
I don't want to get in it. It's beautiful. I don't want to get in a car
Oh,
and go
exactly.
drive and sit in a line at Starbucks.
Yep.
I want to go to that local coffee shop.
Absolutely. And there are plenty of people that want that. And what we've not done a good job of is providing choice in development patterns. It's been one size fits all since after World War II, really.
And so a way to incorporate some of these ideas is through the land development code.
Absolutely.
And maybe
And codes, yeah, or regulations around operations too.
that's a big
Basically,
one.
basically respecting the neighbors, right?
Right. Allowing the use of a beer and wine permit, but making them close at a respectable time.
Right.
Allowing and maybe 2 less parking spaces if you put in bike infrastructure,
Absolutely.
or some creative incentives where people from a community can gather.
Sure.
I think also
Well, or having on-street parking,
right.
for example. So one of our favorite restaurants in downtown Orlando, they have no parking. It's all on-street parking in that neighborhood. So if you want to go there, you walk there, or you on-street park.
Tampa's urban core has the best opportunity to be the most aggressive in terms of these policies.
Agreed.
When I advocate on this show for things like reducing parking minimums or certain setback lines or building buildings
To the back of sidewalk.
back of the sidewalk, all that sort of stuff, I think we have to recognize not every area of a city is appropriate for things like that.
Correct.
And so in the urban core, as example, you might be able to one day very soon get away with no parking minimum, by code.
Right.
Not maybe even have a parking maximum you can
Right.
supply.
Oh, absolutely.
But that certainly is not applicable in a neighborhood, because then you've got traffic building up. You got people parking in front of people's houses, maybe illegally. I mean, I can think of in my head a few
we have
businesses.
problems. Yeah.
So you got to be methodical.
Yes,
But there's got to be creative solutions in there.
there are.
Is there, putting aside a planned development like Baldwin Park,
Right.
is there a municipality in Florida, you mentioned Sarasota,
Yeah.
that really has been forward thinking with some of the land development policy?
I think there's a lot of them.
Really?
I think yes, in Florida, there's a lot of them. And part of that is because the Congress really started in Florida. The original founders of the Congress are Elizabeth Platter-Syberg and Andreas Dwani. So we have like 300 members in Florida, and all of them work in Florida and are working with cities and towns to fix their land development regulations.
The Congress for New Urbanism.
Yes,
And that all started in Seaside, right?
correct.
That whole area up there was developed.
That's the most visible and most that people think of, but it's basically become a tourist destination. It's not a place where people live like
Right.
they did in the beginning.
We're going to have to, is there a municipality that is historic? Let's just say the grid has been there for 100 years and they've found a way to implement new policies and seen change. Like in my head, I'm thinking Sarasota,
Winter Park.
Winter Park. Another
They're
great example.
downtown. I mean, it was Dover Cole, another Florida-based firm that did the master planning for downtown Winter Park that recreated Park Avenue.
David, go back to the slideshow there. Yeah, Winter Park is incredible too. You also have the train line that
Yeah.
stops in the
Oh,
park.
yeah. Yeah.
You've got all like the wine bar, then
Yeah.
you've got the school.
Yeah.
You know, I've always thought about Tampa had a couple different municipalities that were independent that were annexed, but I don't think as many as a place like Orlando, where you've got all these like sort of small towns around it. Like Tampa had, like West Tampa was an independent city from
Gotcha.
1895 to 1925.
Oh, wow.
Ybor was an independent city for
Right.
only a few years in the
Right.
1800s. Outside of that, I mean, Port Tampa City, right? But outside of that, we largely haven't had the opportunity to have like a Winter Park, which was its own little downtown
Yes.
district.
Yes.
And I wonder if the area we're in now, which is Hyde Park, Spanish Town Creek, along with the University of Tampa, like this little what would I call this on the river here? It's like a bend in the river here in downtown.
Yeah.
You know, could this become a version of like a Winter Park where you have wider sidewalks and little
I think in Tampa,
shops?
there's lots of opportunities for those kinds of development patterns. I think there's the demand for that is pretty large.
Because you're not going to be able to build Hyde Park Village. You're not
Right.
going to have the availability of real estate to build something like that from scratch. You're going to have to work with the grid
And
you have.
unless you find a place like, oh gosh, I should know this, on Dale Mabry, the shopping center that's been bought.
Midtown?
Yeah, no, not Midtown.
Oh, Britton
further south,
Plaza.
Britton Plaza, right. And there are places throughout Tampa where you have large commercial lots that could create that kind of downtown. I mean, Park Avenue in Winter Park is not that big. When you look at the length of it,
Yeah.
the part that's really vibrant is pretty small.
No, it's only a few blocks.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't
That's a
necessarily
small number of blocks.
Here's the thing too. You don't need more than that.
No.
You know,
It's plenty.
we don't need Central Avenue in St. Pete to
Correct.
run through, McDill. It's like
No.
you could only have a 4-block
Oh,
little
absolutely.
district that
Absolutely.
could serve a great number of single family homes.
Absolutely. I've worked on a project at ETM when I was a consultant in Jacksonville called Brooklyn North, and it's a person that went in and bought a bunch of basically distressed residential blocks, and we did a master plan, and it's pretty compact.
Yeah.
It's in the process. It's the Park Avenue's been rebuilt, and so now the development's happening.
Yeah, an area that I think will have a lot of demand is the area that we're looking at on the satellite. So Spanish Town Creek, you've got a lot of surface parking. You've got these incredibly wide streets because that's where the trolley lines were run. That's where the streetcar
really?
was. That's why Magnolia is so wide and some of these
Wow.
roads are so wide.
I forgot. I didn't think about it that way, but that makes perfect sense.
You've got a streetcar that hooks up to Hyde Park Village
Right.
that has a stop somewhere like where St. John's is on Platte or something like,
Gotcha.
just in general, right?
Sure.
And you connect that to the rest of the streetcar grid.
Sure.
Wow, you might to start to talk about a cool little district here
Yeah.
because the reality is this area has been destroyed and it needs to be rebuilt.
Gotcha.
There's too much surface parking. The
Understood.
infrastructure hasn't been able to keep up because there's no
Sure.
economic activity, and you basically
Or
have
the right buyer.
or the right buyer to see the vision for it.
Yeah.
And so I think there's opportunity in this area. Another really, really interesting development from the 1920s, Davis Islands.
Oh, yeah.
So go over to Davis Islands.
I rode there this morning.
This has its own little village,
Their
right?
own little downtown.
This
we
was-
go there and sit outside and have dinner many times.
Fantastic, right?
Yep.
And why are the homes there so expensive? Because it's awesome, and that's where people want to live. Why is Hyde Park so expensive? Because it has that commercial.
It has that
access.
character. Yeah,
It
it
has
has
that
the character.
character.
It has a small downtown character.
And so, in my head, there's a lot of debate currently, not only in this area but really all around the state, of densification and
Sure.
entitlements.
Sure.
Do you really need more density and more entitlements to achieve what we're talking about here? Or could you get rid of some of the bureaucracy and red tape and make the permitting and the code process more efficient and
Yes.
keep the level of density you have.
Yes. Yes, you can.
So that's my whole thing. It's like, and truthfully, you kind of have to sit in the middle, right? Like, I think any policy that pushes out single family style living is probably never going to be adopted because there's too many people that enjoy their way of life.
Sure.
And that should certainly be respected. Meaning, I wouldn't personally ever want to see Davis Island's Village be developed with any sort of high rises or anything even over 4 stories.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think it should largely remain this smaller neighborhood
Yeah.
commercial district.
Which, based on the redevelopment that's happening over there, it looks like that's what it is because nothing is taller than 4 stories that I've seen, even the brand new stuff.
Yes. And so maybe what you can do is you can make it easier for that person to open a coffee shop in whatever way
on
you
the
can.
ground floor.
On the ground floor.
That's the thing about the new urbanism is that down the ground floors, and again, this is all about design too. It's not just about land development regulations. It's also about how things are built and having active spaces on the ground floor of apartment buildings and condos is really important to get it right. And you see that a lot in St. Pete for sure.
You definitely do.
Yeah.
And why couldn't you do it for 2 stories?
You could do it for 2 stories.
You can, but it's very difficult currently the way
tougher.
Things are.
Yeah.
So the answer from what I've observed is that they are going to increase density to push further along some of the development incentives. They tried to do it with the comprehensive plan.
Gotcha.
South Tampa and other parts of this community just rose up and were totally against it. They've since pulled back their densification.
Interesting.
My whole thing is you got to pick a lane, meaning you can't keep the codes the way they are. You can't keep the level of bureaucracy and red tape.
Agreed.
And not increase the densification because we'll just sit with the same thing we have for my entire life. I mean, the commercial corridors in this city really are atrocious because we're caught in this middle. It's so damn hard.
And
like
the
I told you, what I'm working with.
speeds on the roadways.
Speeds on the roadways, the design of the roadways, all the above. It's very, very hard to redevelop with an antiquated code and then not having enough density to make numbers work. That's why developers are always coming to the city saying, we need to build more here in order to make the deal work.
Right.
What I would advocate for is let's not change the density at all. I actually don't think you need to. I just think you need to make these lanes
not in
easier.
Tampa.
Not in Tampa.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so either.
We've got the entitlements we need. It's just that the process itself is muddy and needs to be streamlined.
I would like and I've seen this. I've seen this or heard where this is done, but in some cities, especially when I was working in California, I'm guessing, where cities would had like 2 sets of land development regulations. If you go this route, the path is going to be much smoother and much faster and much easier. If you keep doing what's been going on for the last 60 years, you're still going to have to deal with all the same crap you've been dealing with.
Right.
That's kind of the model, and I have not seen a lot of that in Florida. It's been like an all or nothing, one or the other, and I think that's been part of the challenge.
Well, we've got an awesome opportunity because we're redoing the land development code. So I hope that, and I know that the city and the third party, the contractor is experienced in redoing land development codes across the country. And I'm sure they're going to be forward thinking when they redo this whole thing.
Yeah, I hope so.
We've got a lot to show off too.
I think
the way
city,
Ybor connects, the history of it all.
The city has so much going for it. It's not funny. We could not have moved here at a better time. You couldn't have paid me to live here 10 years ago.
Right.
Not with the downtown the way it was.
The downtown, but also like
Armature works.
I grew up in Palmacia, which is regarded as like the affluent part of
That's
town.
where my son-in-law and daughter live. He's an attorney for the 5th largest accounting firm in the world.
Congrats to him. That's amazing. But like when I was, in the 90s, we had a murder across the street. We had, some sketchy characters hanging out on Beta Bay and Concordia.
Gotcha.
We used to do our laundry at the Circle K, so we'd walk and I'd go get a push pot from the farm stores. And, I don't remember there being like crosswalk lights. I don't remember there being, it would people, that have moved here in the last even decade kind of don't know that Tampa used to be really, really, really
There's some rough areas.
Some rough areas.
Yeah, my wife grew up in Tampa up off of Sly Ave.
Yeah. That area especially
Yeah.
still needs help, really.
Yeah, it does.
So, David, back to the presentation there, page 10. You have this funny slide. There's too much traffic for Billy to walk to school, so we drive him.
Right, exactly. It's so typical of the way people think. People complain about the lines at the school, and yet they are in the line. They are traffic.
You are traffic. You are the one.
Everybody is traffic.
Okay, David, next slide.
Yeah, Ian Lockwood's an engineer, a good friend.
And so where were we, David? Scroll down. I think you were on the 8 out of top 20 nationally. Now, this data is current. This is 2025?
Yes, this was the most recent Dangerous by Design report. And,
wow.
the data goes up to 2022 because we're always 2 years behind. I think it's 2024, but the cover, you saw the cover, whatever the year was that was on that. So they do this every 2 years. And what's happened is that other places have gotten worse. It's not that we've gotten better. By and large, the state as a whole, is that other states have gotten worse.
Wow. So 8 out of the top 20 worst metros, this is for pedestrian deaths.
Correct.
Right?
Annual pedestrian fatality rate per 100,000 people.
Number 5 is Daytona Beach. Number 8 is Tampa. 11 is Melbourne. 14, Miami. 15, 16, 17, Jacksonville, Cape Coral, Sarasota. And then 18 is Orlando.
And it's based on what we did in the city of Orlando. I had 6 commissioners. And when we did our safety action plan, I told the consultant, I said, I want you to pick the 3 most dangerous segments of roadway in each commissioner district so that when I go to the commissioners, I don't just have a list for the whole city. I've got 3 roadways in their district that are the most dangerous places for their constituents. And those out of those 6 commissioners, the 3 segments that the consultant identified were responsible for between 28 and 79% of the fatalities and serious injuries of pedestrians and cyclists in their commissioner district. So if we could fix those segments, we would see double-digit reductions in fatalities and serious injuries for pedestrians and bicyclists in those districts.
And how did the data end up?
And then I left.
And then you left, but how did the data read after those policies were implemented?
Well, the action plan, we finished the action plan right at the beginning of COVID. And the mayor did not want to act on the action plan until after the COVID issues were behind us. And I was gone by then, so I don't know.
Wow. But initially you said that Orlando had 5 of the, or what was the statistic you gave about Florida initially?
Had 4 of the 5 most dangerous metro areas in the country, according to Dangerous by Design.
Now we're 8
out of 20, right?
Sounds a little better, but not problem solved.
No, the numbers are still terrible.
Numbers are still terrible.
Yeah,
but we've seen a lot of improvements.
There have been improvements, and the thing is, it's like the conversation I had with the safety engineer, who's a good friend of mine now. We don't know what we can't tell. With the work that we did starting in 2011, what we don't know is how many people are living that would not have lived otherwise had we not done that work.
Wow. You're saving lives with these policies.
Yes.
40,000 a year.
40,000, approaching 40,000 a year again.
Now, why did the number fall and then go back up?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure.
Is it maybe because of COVID? There was less people on the road?
It could be because there's less people on the road.
For 18 months
people
or so.
People are not driving. Not as many people are driving to work as they used to. I mean, that's starting to come back.
You're getting Amazon. You're getting Uber Eats.
Yeah.
Well,
there's cultural changes that have reduced driving.
So here's the thing, too, about the future of transportation. So I think the good news at the state level out of all the bad news recently is that there is an emphasis on transportation. Now, the flying car thing, the eVTOL, how that's some sort of part of the solution.
It will never solve the congestion problem.
Totally agree. And I'd love to hear specifics about why you think that. But what I was going to say is the good news is it's on the table as a part of the conversation.
Right.
As opposed to not being talked about at all, as opposed to we're just going to keep building more highways. It does seem from my observation that there is more of an emphasis from FDOT in the last few years and from county elected officials and state elected officials where they're talking about solutions.
Well, and the Safe Streets for All funding at the federal level that was put into place during the Biden administration has a huge potential to improve things nationally if people will take their safety action plans and implement them. It's just like a complete streets policy. If you don't implement it, all you've got is a policy and no change.
Got it.
A lot of policies have been adopted on complete streets and nothing was ever done with them. There were Vision Zero policies that were adopted in the state of Florida in some cities, and then they never actually did the action plans to implement them.
Why are the eVTOL flying cars not the answer to our transportation issues?
Anything flying is going to be a challenge because they're so heavily regulated. And think about the airports and where the airports are located. I mean, you got Davis Island Airport and you got Tampa International, and those areas create a lot of off-limit space for things like that to fly. We had the same problem in Orlando.
You've also got Tampa.
You couldn't just fly anywhere.
You've also got, to add to it, right? You've got Tampa Executive Airport
Oh,
at
yeah.
the Northeast.
Oh, exactly.
So you've got the Bermuda Triangle of air travel around the city.
Right. And
So-
the cost to fly, I mean, there's just so many issues that cause issues. I mean, it's going to be for the very wealthy.
Is it the only solution? Is it a part of the solution? I've seen the Republicans talk about this more than anybody at the state level. And I just can't see a path forward where it's adopted by the common folk. I mean, it seems like that would only be used by the wealthiest people to go maybe from airport to downtown and back.
Correct. And not have to sit in traffic on the way there.
You know, is that going to move the needle? I think we kind of both are.
No.
So, David, pull up that recent eVTOL article. I think was it Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins brought it up, or it was brought up recently, and they actually showed a picture of what these eVTOLs could look like. And the damn thing only had 2 seats.
Oh, yeah.
So if you've got a pilot, now I'm assuming it's an autonomous vehicle. There's no pilot, right? It's a computer, I think.
Oh, wow.
You know, so fully expressed, there's no pilot, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
But if there's a pilot, that's 1 seat.
Yeah, the ones that we were looking at in Orlando, or the company that came into Orlando, I think had 6 seats, if I remember correctly.
So is there like a lobby that, pitches politicians on these things? Because how could you
Of course.
Well, but how could you reasonably think that this could be a viable transportation alternative?
It's called an alternative. To me, it's not. Pursues highway in the sky to combat growing interstate congestion. That's just not realistic.
So Florida's first manned demonstration of an air taxi took place at Tampa Airport 2023.
Right. Yeah.
So here's a new article here. FDOT is laying the groundwork for a cutting-edge aerial infrastructure, starting with a first-of-its-kind testing facility.
Sure.
And we hit the paywall on the Business Journal.
It's an alternative. It's not going to solve congestion. It can't even make a dent. I mean, just look at I-4. That's the one I use a lot because I use I-4 to go to our Orlando office, our College Park office. And look at the amount of undeveloped land on I-4 between here and Orlando. And it's already 15 to 20 mile backups coming into Tampa when I drive over there at 6 or 6:30 in the morning. Between downtown and 275, the backups are 15 to 20 miles every day. That I drive over there, yeah.
Floridians know I-4. I mean, it is
it's the most congested road in the country, according to news articles I've seen.
The most congested road in the country.
Yeah.
And when they say, scroll down, David, real quick, just 1 second. What did it say about how FDOT laying the groundwork? So aerial infrastructure from FDOT, like what would that look like? Where
I
you
have
work?
no idea.
Well, let's. I mean, is that like you would work with the federal government to establish these like air lanes?
There'd have to be regulations. Yeah, I would think so. I mean, there's a lot of issues. Believe me, we were dealing with this in Orlando before I left, and there's a lot of issues.
So all of these articles are from October, and I've heard this air infrastructure thing for a couple of years, and it sounds
that image looks like. It is Orlando. That's the company in Orlando.
So there's an air taxi testing facility coming along parts of Interstate 4.
It's not that helicopter-looking thing. It was the one that was in that still image.
Are not too far in the distant future. Central Florida is the prime test space for air taxis due to our congested highways like I-4. But before Orlando enters the Jetsons era, Fox 35's Matt Trezza gives us a closer look.
How would you like this to get you to and from the office? Governor Ron DeSantis says it could happen sooner than we think.
This will be the nation's first advanced air mobility test track, and it will have dedicated airspace, driving innovative research and development for this new technology. And, you know, I saw it. I was in it. I think it can transport. You have a pilot. You could transport, I think, what, like 4 or 5 people?
Sounds cool. I mean, right?
SunTrax is the Turnpike's facility.
So it sounds cool.
Oh,
I mean,
of course.
if you can implement something like this,
And if you can afford to pay the bill to fly them.
but let's be real,
Yeah.
we're going to need to get a little more
Oh, a train
dedicated to
is
solve
a much more effective approach. So the Brightline system is a much more effective approach.
Now, they're having, I saw in the some publication about some sort of funding issue,
Mm-hmm.
right?
They're
And
trying to secure funding to go from Orlando to Tampa.
would the Florida Department of Transportation ever take on the challenge of a singular rail line?
I don't see that happening.
Now, why not?
There would have to be regulation changes in the legislature to allow funding for operations. And what the DOT does in conjunction with US DOT is can provide the infrastructure or portions of the funding for the infrastructure and can pay for the capital, but they will not pay for operations. So at the City of Orlando, what they called a BRT, it's really a circulator called Limo. We funded the entire operation costs for Limo.
Is the Florida Department of Transportation, the Florida Department of Transportation is a state agency.
Yes.
But is it set up like legally, the structure of it, by the federal government? Like the federal government says to a state, you have to have a state level transportation organization.
Correct. And there's all kinds of regulations that dictate how DOT operates.
See, so the same issue happens, you know, from a citizen level in its relationship to the federal government, county, city, and then city, state, all of it is connected.
Yep.
You're saying that it is illegal for the Florida Department of Transportation to like create a train line and operate it from Orlando to Tampa.
Correct. They did that once in Southeast Florida, and it will never happen again, I don't believe. So they subsidize the commuter rail in Southeast Florida, but I'm not sure how that was done or what the funding mechanism was.
Sunrunner? No, I'm not.
No.
Sunrunner.
This has been there a long time.
Mm.
But that's the problem, is the operations cost. That's the problem with any rail system. I mean, the streetcar, I'm sure, is probably funded entirely by the city.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe.
And the state even has regulations about, the state DOT even has regulations about how the funds that are already allocated are spent. Like in our legislation, unlike most states, you have to pay for operations and maintenance before you can spend a dime on capacity increases. And most of the states do not do that, which is why a lot of the states have just horrendous infrastructure, especially in the Northeast.
Do you think less federal government policy making and oversight would be the answer? Like let states completely independently control their own transportation future?
It would give the states a lot more flexibility. Yes.
Then combine that with some support from the federal government for
Right.
certain initiatives,
Yeah.
rather than have the federal government set standardized policy.
Personally, I would like to. I think because the trust fund's been in bankruptcy since 2008. In fact, there's a slide on that too, and it's only going to get worse because it's not indexed to inflation. You can see where the trend crosses the line.
You remember which slide? We got 57 here.
That's it
This
right
one?
there. Yeah. That's the Highway Trust Fund without 9 bailouts. So there's been 9 bailouts so far.
What is the Highway Trust Fund?
So that's comes from gas tax.
At the state level.
At the federal level.
Federal
No, there's
level.
a federal gas tax. It's not indexed to inflation. It hasn't been increased since 1993. And it became, and like I said, it was projected to be insolvent in 10 to 15 years, and it was 14 years, 2008.
So where are we at today with this?
So we're at 2020, and you can see it says right there, if we spend at the current rates without the 9 general fund transfusions, the trust fund would be in the hole by $600 billion by 2035. So what's below the line is what would have happened had there not been infusions from the general fund, general taxpayer funds. So when people say, well, we should only be spending federal funds on car transportation because it's the gas tax, but that's not true. It's been $275 billion has come from general fund
To make up for the lack
the lack of gas tax, because it wasn't indexed to inflation. It still is not indexed to inflation, and there's not been another increase in the federal gas tax. Same thing with the local option gas taxes in Florida. Those are not indexed to inflation. The only one that's indexed to inflation is the DOT's gas tax.
So
The state gas tax.
the city or the county could actually increase the gas tax.
They could, yes. It's called a local option gas tax.
And
So they can adjust that, and there's also an option to just create a sales tax for transportation. So there's an infrastructure sales tax and there's a transportation sales tax. The infrastructure sales tax is more common because it's used for it can be used for parks, for schools, and things of that nature. The transportation sales tax can only be used for transportation.
And that is the avenue Hillsborough County went down with
Right.
all for transportation.
And passed it, and then it got rejected because of the lawsuit.
Because of the lawsuit that pointed to the language
Correct.
of that referendum.
Correct. And Orange County has tried twice or 3 times and has failed. And it's really for 2 reasons. One of the reasons, in my view, is because, and we can use MacDill as an example since you probably drive that. Look at the condition of MacDill.
Atrocious.
And my son-in-law and daughter live on Fountain, and their street's in horrendous shape. And I had to tell him, because he was complaining about his property taxes, and I said, yes, and not 1 penny goes to doing this work. I said, you've got to have the transportation sales tax. And so the problem has been, in my view, the messaging has not been done very well. In Orlando, they were putting too much of that funding into transit when the roads are falling apart. Stage it. If I was in charge in Hillsborough County, I would stage it to start repairing a large percentage of the roads that are basically failing. I mean, there's all kinds of failing. There's stormwater failing, which is causing dips in MacDill and on and on. It really needs to be reconstructed.
Right.
So why would you fund the streetcar in downtown, for example, with a large amount of money when the roads are failing all over the city?
Right.
Because then once you get that, once the public can see that things are being done to address it, and they have some sense of when it's going to happen, like I've asked, when is MacDill going to be repaved? The city has no clue. So how can you advance a transit system that only serves a small percentage of people when the roads are failing all over the city? That's a challenge.
You've got this thing here in Tampa. I'm sure other areas deal with it as well, where it's like, hey, why don't you guys redo Bayshore? Oh, the county owns it.
Right.
Hey, why don't you fix West Shore? Oh, the state owns it.
Right.
And Harry Cohen just said MacDill's getting done next year. He did? He's a county commissioner.
Oh,
right?
really?
So you've got this thing where you've got these different levels of government that are in charge of the maintenance and repair of these road systems. So is there a better solution? Like, does the state take over some of the administration of these roads and not let local municipalities get in the way of themselves? Like, you've seen this recent thing at the state level with the crosswalks, with the paint, in Palmacia, where I grew up, Roosevelt Elementary, right? It's great what they've done. They've put the planners out. They've kind of made their nice little crosswalk so kids can safely get to school from the neighborhoods. there was these awesome advocates like sidewalk stompers that have advocated
Oh,
to
yeah.
get this stuff done. And then the state comes in and paints it all over. And now it
Right.
looks like shit. So it's like, could that be the future? And I'm not advocating for it. I'm just asking, is the future where the state takes over the management and the maintenance of all of these roads so that there's this process and procedure, like every 25 years you're getting repaved.
Yeah,
There's
that's
this standardization.
right. I mean, yeah, they have the standards in place that require them to maintain the system, first of all. I mean, a local government could do the same thing to say, okay, we're going to do a transportation sales tax, but it can't be spent on anything but fixing the damaged roadways, pavements. In other words, you've got to maintain, and they're graded. I mean, they're inspected and graded based on the conditions. So if your conditions are below 70, let's say, you can't spend another nickel until you get all the roadway system up to 70s. So that's one way. I think the city, I mean, a few years ago, there was an attempt by the city of Miami, Tampa, and Orlando to be able to be broke out. And this had been a while ago. That would be broke out so the transportation sales tax or infrastructure sales tax could be done just within the city proper. And I think that would be a much better approach.
That was a state legislature
Correct,
solution that you
correct.
said failed?
It did not pass the legislature.
Got it. And what that would have done is let those 3 cities have direct control.
Operate independent of the counties, right? Exactly.
That sounds like a good solution for a city.
It is.
And so why would that not be pushed through the legislature?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure. Maybe the Florida Association of Counties opposed it.
Well, I wanted to ask you about offer transportation. You know, it's like if the people of a particular community vote to increase their own taxes,
Right.
because they have grievances regarding transportation, the referendum passes the voters. Then a particular county commissioner sues, and you have these lawyers get together, push it up through the state courts, and they
Right.
get rid of it against the will of the people.
I know that's incomprehensible to me that
Me
happened.
too. But why is there such a strong push against some of these ideas we've talked about today?
Power, I'm guessing. Money, as I'm sure, comes into play. I don't understand why a county administrator would or county commissioner would care, unless they felt like they were losing. They would lose revenue at the county level because chances are the property taxes are higher in the city.
Yeah.
Which means there's more income per unit area than there is for the county, I would bet.
Because you can't tell me it's the semantics, right? It's like
No,
you
that's
can't.
just an excuse.
Right. Right. Well, I think the good news is as we move further through the years, there seems to be more people that are looking at things sort of through the lens that I've found myself to look at them and what you've seen them through for decades, really, in your
yeah.
experience working
Yeah.
in this industry for close to 50 years.
I mean, one of the best things that could happen, in my view, at some level, is that the Federal Transportation Trust Fund does not get spent on anything but the interstate. If that's going to be the way it works, then let it just fund the interstate and states take care of the other roadway system. Because otherwise, we're going to just keep adding capacity, keep adding interstate highways and widening them, and to no avail.
Can you go to slide 16, David? Because I want to talk about some of the economic cost of kind of status quo. You've got a slide here about the cost of collisions.
Yeah.
One of the major things we deal with here in Florida is, first of all, I believe we are the most litigious state. So you have
Look at the billboards.
Look at the billboards. You've got attorneys, right? Auto accident, call me. You have this unbelievable slew of personal injury, kind of lawyers working through the system.
Same with television commercials.
Because we have so many traffic accidents
Yep.
in this community. It says motor
It's like
vehicle
winning the
crashes
lottery.
cost $463 billion. This is
Yep.
from, I guess, 2019
Yep.
numbers. It could
Yep.
be higher today.
Oh, I'm sure it would
I'm
be.
sure it is, right? That drives up the cost of our insurance, right?
Absolutely.
It's like, so there's these really interesting external costs to the status quo that I don't think many people are
Oh,
tracking.
people have no clue. They don't know. I mean, the only reason I know these things is because I cared enough to find out.
And so you've added this in here as context. A lot of
Yes.
this presentation here. Maybe would you be willing to share this with people if they
Of
want?
course. Oh, I've sent this slide deck to, I have no idea how many people I've sent it to.
If real quick, if people wanted to grab it from you, would you want to share
Oh,
your email?
absolutely. And I voluntarily will come in to like MPOs or local governments and do the presentations that I've been doing. I did one for the county engineer in Alachua County I've known since '98 because he was on the Florida Green Book Committee, which is a group of local engineers who basically help put together the book that DOT is responsible for producing for cities and counties. It's called the Florida Green Book. I've known him since '98, and he knows my track record. And so he and I were talking when I stopped to see him on the way to the Jacksonville office, and I told him, would you be interested in me coming in and doing one of my presentations for your staff? And he said yes. He invited the city of Gainesville, Newberry, Alachua, and a couple of other we had 40 people from management and leadership in Alachua County that I did this workshop for.
Have you done this workshop here in Hillsborough County?
Not yet. No. Oh, yes, I did. I did it for the county, not this specific one, but I did one just on the Complete Streets implementation for the county engineer here.
That was a big
in
deal for a
Hillsborough
while.
County.
Like even me, I think that was all initiated even before I started this show 3 years ago. Before I
It would have
really
been.
started
It would
to
have
pay
been.
attention.
Yeah, it would have been like within
Like
6 months after I got here.
even I, who wasn't necessarily like privy to this information, heard about it. Like it was a pretty big deal.
I did it to the staff, the county staff in the
Yeah.
transportation department.
Yeah, we citizens heard it too because I think
Okay.
the city was putting out information, especially regarding like
be.
Vision Zero.
Yeah, yeah. That was a big focus of the presentation was Vision Zero and Safe System.
And Vision Zero says traffic deaths are preventable,
Yep.
right? Integrate human failing and approach,
Yep.
prevent fatal and severe crashes.
Yep.
Systems approach, saving lives is not expensive.
Correct.
Essentially designing streets to be safer.
Correct.
And Vision Zero being have zero people
It's
die.
an international organization, and we were fortunate to adopt it at the city of Orlando.
You'd imagine it's like, well, why haven't we had that before? Duh, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Well, it's relatively new, as you can see from the European, and these countries were all very auto-dominant cultures at one time.
And the numbers are staggering too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Australia, for example,
Yep.
1994 to 2015,
Yep.
50 to 60% decrease
Reduction,
in
yes.
fatalities.
Think
That's huge.
if we had that in the U.S., it'd be 20,000, which is still too many fatalities.
But the numbers are staggering
Yeah,
over here.
and the fact is, you have to focus on who's still living that wouldn't have been living otherwise. That's part of the story.
Let's get down to slide 40, David, because there's the context classifications of complete streets and land development code, and it shows. This picture here is interesting because it shows sort of the layers, right?
Yep.
Of how we live in America.
Yep.
On the right side is what would be like a downtown, right? Skyscrapers, high rise, high density.
Yep.
All the way on the left side, which is like your more suburban parking
Correct.
lots.
It actually goes to purely rural. A T1 or a C1 is purely rural. C2 is like agricultural. So it becomes more urban. Then C3 is what we use to address the suburban environment. So C3R is residential suburban sprawl, and C3C is commercial suburban sprawl.
And what we're looking at here is what you mentioned in the beginning of the show that you worked on for 2 years to
At
implement
DOT,
these policies
yes.
at the department at
Yep.
FDOT.
Yep, from 2014 to 2016. That's how long I was there working on this part. I was there for 5 years, 3 of which was just the safety initiative. And then you can see that ANATH signed this policy in September. We were at the Pro Bike, Pro Walk conference probably a month before that and wrote this.
And Anath
Prasad, yeah.
was the FDOT secretary.
The secretary, right.
The secretary.
And then Jim Boxhole was behind him, and Jim was, I would say, even more supportive because ANATH was a big fan of the DDIs.
You kind of always have to have the political buy-in for
The leadership, it's all about the leadership.
right.
All about the leadership.
Staff can have the best ideas and be forward-thinking and pull context from different parts of the world and the
Yep.
country, but if the leadership is not behind the initiative,
Or the elected officials in this case,
right,
which we have now at the governor's office.
is FDOT the secretary is an appointed position, or is that
Oh, yeah.
appointed by the governor?
Yes.
Got it. So depending on who the governor is, has a dramatic
Oh,
impact.
huge. I had Governor Scott, and Governor Scott was very supportive during
Governor
my
Scott
time.
was
Yeah.
very supportive.
Yeah, I was actually very pleased because not only was he supportive, but he actually recognized our employees in a way I'd never seen any governor do before. He sent cards to like my executive assistant. I got a letter from him because I got the governing award in 2014. He wrote me a letter
Wow.
congratulating me. I got 2 letters from him during my time there, and 2 or 3 cards, and no governor had ever done that before or
Wow.
since.
And it would probably be hard to compare because you're not working at the state, the current governor.
Correct.
But FDOT at the time was super receptive. They implemented this. And we've kind of gone through some of the statistics, and you can even drive down the roads and see there has been a dramatic difference.
Oh, yeah.
In some of these
In the
the
more
streets.
urban area, yeah, it's primarily the urban areas, which is what it was intended for.
Like Fowler Avenue, as
Correct.
example, is a part of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then, David, can we pull back up that street on Orlando with
Orange Blossom Trail.
Orange Blossom Trail? Super, super interesting. So Orange Blossom Trail, that's the name of the road.
Yeah, 6-lane high-speed roadway.
Floridians know this all too well, these types of corridors.
Oh,
I mean, how many corridors all across Florida are these large roads with commercial properties with parking lots?
Yes.
You've got people trying to cross the road
Who
that-
live adjacent to
who
them.
live adjacent.
Yep.
People pulling in and out of commercial areas with basically a speedway out front.
Oh, absolutely. There's
Extremely
people
dangerous.
flying through these corridors.
So-
And it's also US 441, as you can see.
Explain what FDOT has done here to improve the safety of Orange Blossom Trail.
So they put in the areas where we had the greatest problems with primarily pedestrian fatalities. They put in 6 raised crosswalks. They put fences in the median to discourage people from crossing outside of the signals. And of course, a big part of the reason why they put in 6 crosswalks is because the actual signal spacing is so large that nobody's going to walk to them. So it should be south of I-4.
So
It's north of Holden.
north of Holden.
Yep. Anywhere in there we should be able to see. Yeah, there we go.
Got it.
There's
So
one
explain to
already.
people what you sort of used to have, the number of
Yeah.
fatalities, and what was corrected.
Yeah, so there's 2 things. First of all, this is a 6-lane roadway. You're coming off of I-4, so chances are people are speeding because they came off of I-4, and it's a 6-lane divided roadway. There's nothing that tells people that you should drive slow, and yet you have all kinds of pedestrian activity that, to the point that, from what I was told, a pedestrian was getting hit like almost every month on average. So you can see they put in this fencing to discourage people from crossing mid-block, and then they put in 6 raised crosswalks, so it forces drivers to slow down to about 20 miles an hour. And they put in these are called hawks. They're hybrid beacons. So basically the lights flash red when the button is activated by a pedestrian, and then it turns red. And then, of course, the motorists are supposed to stop back at the white line, so that other drivers can see that they're stopped and why they're stopped. But you can see they've got the pedestrian symbols in the crosswalks, and they also have speed reduction or speed feedback signs to tell drivers that they're driving too fast. So they put in 6 of these. And up until recently, there had not been a pedestrian hit in almost 2 years.
So with these small infrastructure changes, this road went from someone being hit every month
Right.
to no one being hit in a
2
2-year
years.
time
Yes.
span.
Yeah.
And these are, you're not redoing an entire road,
No, you're
from
fixing the worst parts.
fixing the worst parts
Yeah.
and giving people the correct incentives from both a pedestrian perspective and a driver perspective to basically pay attention to one another
Yep.
and to safely cross the street.
Yep. And there's a very transit dependent corridor because you have a lot of service workers that live along this corridor. One thing that the state most engineers have believed for decades, and I found out this was not the case when I was a state roadway design engineer, is that we believed that the AASHTO criteria that we used to design the system is based on safety research. And we found out in '96, when I was a state roadway design engineer at a national conference, that the criteria is not based on safety research. It's based on maintaining the operating speed and capacity of the roadway. So it's not based on safety. The other thing we found out is for speeds 35 and lower, there's no difference in the carrying capacity of the roadway between a 10 and a 12-foot lane. So both of those things were things that got my attention and drove me to start doing things differently at DOT back when I was there in the 90s.
So from a safety perspective, having a 10-foot wide or a 12-foot wide lane, a 10-foot is presumably safer because people are paying more attention, but at the same time, it does not affect the flow of traffic.
Does not affect the capacity of the roadway.
So there are policies we can implement.
Oh, they were. Well, we did at DOT.
Right, you did, that can continue the traffic flow.
Sure. Based on the context, like if you're in a C4 and above, you can use a 10-foot lane without having to justify not having 12-foot lanes. And that does help. I mean, there's other things. There are a number of things that have to do with speed management, which is why the DOT has a whole chapter on speed management now in the design manual, and they explain, what the proper application is based on the context of the built environment. So like on-street parking, for years, we would not allow on-street parking. Now on-street parking is allowed based on the context of the built environment.
And when you say C4 and C1, David, if you go to slide 41, it actually has the entire
it has the entire spectrum of the context class.
Yeah, page 41.
Yeah, so we stole the transect, which is a planning tool used by the new urbanists, and basically adopted it for the state roadway system. So the more rural, obviously C1 is agriculture. It's not even agriculture, it's a natural forest, for example, which we still have some of. C2 would be agricultural. C2T, the transect doesn't actually have a T2. The C2T, though, we had to bring into play because rural towns, of which we have a lot of still, don't want to be called urban. And so that was revealed by some research by an organization called NCHRP. So we adopted that for rural towns. So there's C2T, which is a rural town. Then C3R and C3C are conventional suburban sprawl, commercial and residential, because we can't ignore the fact that the vast majority of development in Florida has been that,
for sure,
outside of the historic cities.
Yep.
And then C4 is when you start getting into a true urban environment where you still have a lot of residential, but you may have some small commercial businesses here and there. And then C5 would be a city like St. Pete, for example, would be C5, and then C6 would be like Miami, for example. So the more urban places should have places. From C4 up, we should be focused more on walkability and speed reduction or speed management.
And C2T, that's a very important distinction. I'm glad that was adopted at FDOT.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Because our small Florida towns are so important.
Yeah. We wouldn't want to call them C4 or C5.
Brooksville, Dade City.
Oh, there's tons of them.
All these little Florida towns are so special.
Millions of them. And in District 1, we had a lot of them that were really, really nice little communities.
Now, here's the issue. A few weeks ago, I drove through Waimama to get to a friend's ranch. You know what I didn't think? This place needs 5,000 homes and suburban communities surrounding it. It will ruin these little Florida cracker towns.
Oh,
when we start
absolutely.
to inject
suburban
densification around a community.
Well, just
like
suburban sprawl.
Suburban sprawl, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And Costco's. Good luck getting small businesses in your little downtown area.
They won't survive.
They won't survive.
They'll die.
They'll die.
Unfortunately. I mean, retail struggles as it is.
And so that's really good that there's a specific classification for that.
Yes.
And because there's a specific classification for those like Florida, I used to call them like Florida cracker towns. I don't know if you're allowed to say that anymore, but C2T, right? These little Florida rural towns. They the implementation of having this designation. What does that mean? Like you can have the best of both worlds.
You can have on-street parking.
You can have on-street
parking.
On
the state roadway system, yes.
On the state roadway system.
Yes.
That's the actual implementation.
I actually have an illustration of that in the examples at the end for Woodville, Florida.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Keep going, David, because this is interesting.
And this is just to try to communicate to engineers and planners what these classifications look like on the high end, because the fact is the C3 and below are still going to be pretty much the way they are. There'll be places where we have to do safety treatments because, for example, signalized intersections are much less safe than a modern roundabout. And so you would want to make sure that you're dealing with safety issues at intersections. Most of the crashes on rural roadways are run off the roads because people are inattentive or driving too fast or whatever. So our focus really had to be on C4 and above in terms of fixing the state road system to be more urban and not just high-speed rural roadways.
That's where the problems were.
Yeah, because we treated every roadway like it was a high-speed corridor if it was on the state system.
Right. It's kind of crazy it took until recently to fix these
Oh, yeah.
policies. You know, I've always been interested on trying to figure out how 100 years ago cities and towns really across the country developed without the level of bureaucracy and just government in general and policy making. There was no FDOT policy in 1925, you know, it's
No.
but somehow it kind of worked,
Yeah.
you know? So have we gone too far in our policy making?
I think so. Yeah, I think that that's why we have to create alternative land development regulations to what has been suburban sprawl for decades.
Yeah.
Because there was no other option. Just like these types of requirements, these are the things that it takes to make a built environment work properly, and it's really a design issue that if you do it right, it's going to work.
A design issue.
It's really a design issue at the end of the day.
So
But it's driven by policy.
You've got here local government's role. Explain this.
So part of what I had to explain, because what DOT had historically, the position they had taken was that we can't do anything about land development regulations, so why try? That was the mindset. And what I said is no, that's not acceptable. We can do something because there's a relationship between land development and what kind of roadway or what kind of transportation system you built. And thankfully, 2 secretaries in a row embraced that and understood that, which I had to illustrate. So part of the reason for doing 150 presentations was, first of all, to educate people on the safety initiative and what things created safety issues and what things could help support walkability. And then once I rolled out the Complete Streets initiative, I had to educate them on what they needed to do different at the local government levels to not create this problem on the arterial system, which is the state and federal highways.
The relationship where the state can only do so much and implement these policies, but if the local governments don't adopt the correct land development code, then what's the point?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, you could put on-street parking on Dale Mabry. Who's going to use it?
Right, exactly.
Nobody, right? It's not going to get used.
Right.
But in downtown, it's in high demand. I mean, I always park on street when I can to avoid a parking garages, just because I don't want people bashing my doors on my car.
Of course.
Keep them a long time.
So, David, go forward a few slides past Baldwin Park, because we talked about Baldwin Park. Down, like keep going in the presentation.
Towards the end.
And then you've got these proposed areas here. So Robinson Street in Orlando. What are we looking at?
So this is a 4-lane undivided roadway. Lake Eola is on the left. It's high in demand, and you can see there's no on-street parking. So people park in the neighborhoods and cross Robinson Street to get to Lake Eola. The Publix is on the other side. So people live on this side, want to walk to Publix on the other side, so they're crossing this street. It terminates at the executive airport, which is like maybe 2 miles from the heart of downtown. I lived a block off of this roadway. People fly down this roadway, and these are actually 9-foot travel lanes because the DOT took on-street parking off of there to make 4 lanes. And statistically, we had a very high crash rate on this roadway. And the DOT actually reached out to me when I was the transportation director at the city because they knew where I came from. And they said, we would like to road diet this street because it will help with the safety issues. And I said, absolutely. So we worked with the district and came up with a plan to road diet Robinson Street. The mayor wanted the utilities undergrounded, but I was focused on the road diet. And I rode on this street on my bike, but I would not ride on this street during certain times of day because the speed at which people drove, and of course they're occupying both lanes because they're so narrow, people don't tend to want to be next to each other. So it's like you could never get out there and ride, but I rode on it all the time. I mean, look how many cars are on it at this time of day. I mean, it's set empty except during the commuting hours. So if you had the slide deck instead of a PDF, when you went to the next slide, you would actually see an image of the road diet. But I don't think that's.
Oh, but it's not on here.
It's a transition.
And
it's a photomorph.
And so currently, what does it look like?
So that's what it looks like. But when the road diet is done, the lane that's right next to the Lake Eola will be a physically separated bike lane, cycle track.
A cycle track.
To get
cyclists off the road.
Correct. It'll be physically separated. And then you'll have 2 lanes, one in each direction, and you'll have turn lanes at specific locations and medians and others.
You've got a huge issue here in Tampa and frankly all across Florida where cyclists do want to be on the road, but it's also they're kind of taking a risk in doing so. And the issue with them with being on a sidewalk is bikes really don't get along with the mom and her baby stroller and the rollerblader and the squirrels and the guy walking his dog. And like, if you force everybody on a side, like Bayshore Boulevard is the perfect example.
Oh yeah.
You've got a decently wide sidewalk, not nearly wide enough for what it
needs
should
to be 20 feet.
Well, what you need to do is you need to have the current sidewalk for pedestrians, people
and
with strollers,
a separate
and then
cycle
a
track.
bike track, cycle track to get the e-scooters and the bicycles.
Yep. I mean, I ride Bayshore in the road every day. I don't do trail. Yeah, I don't do trails because of all the conflicts with dogs and squirrels and pedestrians and et cetera. So I ride in the road all the time, and I do Bayshore Boulevard twice a week typically because I ride to Davis Island, and then between Davis Island and my 2 segments of Bayshore, I get in 25 miles twice a week.
There's the view is absolutely incredible, but the issue is you don't have any real infrastructure. Your only infrastructure to protect you is paint.
Yeah.
Understood. You don't have any of
understood.
There's not even like a plastic divider or anything.
I've been riding 50 to 100 miles a week since 2009. When I stopped running.
Would you be supportive if the county, I guess, owns that road and maintains that road, if the county removed the lanes from north and southbound, removed the bike lanes, and created a brand new cycle track protected along the water side, right on the water, right next to the pedestrian sidewalk?
Yeah, I would ride in the road. I would ride in the travel lane just like I do on Davis Island. I just wouldn't do it at 5 o'clock or whenever they have a shift change at McDill. But I ride, on Saturdays I ride in a group and we don't ride on any trails.
Wouldn't it make sense to not allow bicyclists to ride in the road, but as an alternative, give them a huge, like, badass cycle track right next to the sidewalk on Bayshore?
In that case, it would be fine, and we would still ride in the road.
You would still ride on the road?
Oh, heck yeah. I'm not riding on a sidewalk or a cycle track. There's too many inexperienced riders. And I've taken not just a bike safety course, but a bike safety instructor course because I led a group ride for 10 years in Orlando.
I didn't think about it from that perspective. Like, if you're an experienced cyclist, like these I've never done road cycling, so I don't know.
Sure.
But I never thought about how if you're in a group like that, you don't really want to be with people who are casually riding a bike or
who aren't looking behind.
Dog.
I mean, they're not looking behind them. When you come up on them, they can step off to the left and right in your way at the last minute. It's just not safe.
But to your point about this road in Orlando, Robinson Street, this idea is applicable sort of to something like Bayshore, because you've got the same thing where you've got a travel lane, you've got a park,
Yep.
Because Bayshore is a park. It's just a linear park.
It is a linear park.
And so that's what's being done here on Robinson Street in Orlando is there's a road diet happening
Yep.
in a wider area that's
Correct.
protected
Correct.
for pedestrians and
Yeah.
cyclists.
Physically separated by a curb.
We'll have to, maybe you could send me the update on that when it's finished, but I've
would-
probably seen something like that before.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. Well, it's over here in downtown Tampa, the cycle track in downtown Tampa that has the curb with the parking
Right.
meters and then the parking lane.
Real bike infrastructure
Yeah.
outside of just paint on a road.
Yeah.
And so the next slide is Woodville Highway. Where's this?
That's south of Tallahassee. So Woodville Highway is a 2-lane rural roadway that runs through a rural town, and the Metropolitan Planning Organization funded a study to look at expanding Woodville Highway all the way down to the coast because a lot of people commute into Tallahassee to work at state government. And so Woodville has, like I said, it's a 2-lane roadway, and they have an elementary school there that it's a historic style elementary school like we used to do in the 60s, where it was open and you had like three rows of classes completely open except for a roof, and the front walkway for the elementary school is like 60 feet from Woodville Highway, and people fly down this road. I mean, they drive 60 and 70 miles an hour. And the school guard, when we did our master plan for this project, the school crossing guard told me that people will go around her when she steps out into the road until there's kids actually in the road. People will keep going around her. Wow. With her holding up the sign and her stuff on. And so I told the city, I said, listen, they had just built a dollar store, or just allowed a dollar store to be built. It's the first of that type of stuff coming into Woodville. And they put it behind, the building is set back behind a retention pond and surface parking lot. And I told them, if you keep building like that, the speeds will never change on Woodville Highway. And so I showed them, first of all, the photomorph goes from just the roadway surface to just sidewalks with the crossings marked. And I said, that gives you a place for the pedestrians to be because they didn't have sidewalks, first of all. And then I said, yeah, you can put in trees and that will provide shade for the pedestrians. It's not going to do a whole lot to reduce speeds because people drive this road every single day, and familiarity has a direct impact on speed. But if you bring the buildings up to the sidewalk and put on-street parking in, then you can have a true downtown in Woodville. And the county never got on board with that plan. So it didn't happen.
Go to the next slide, David. It all starts with the dollar store, doesn't it? Doesn't it always seem like that?
It seems that way, yes.
Dollar General.
Yes,
and then
out in the middle, out in these
middle of
historic
nowhere.
towns.
So the result from these actions.
Yeah, so what you can end up with is a quality of life that you don't have otherwise. So the right image is Park Avenue in Winter Park. The left image is in it's just a node in downtown Orlando, and you can see there's residential housing across the street. This was a condo that went up that has restaurants and retail on the ground floor, and everybody loves to go there. In fact, it's usually packed.
This is like a off day, maybe.
Yeah,
You've
it's
got
probably
like half the
probably a
tables.
weekday. Whereas
So-
in the evenings, it's always packed.
The idea that you can do both seems to be an idea that people traditionally in this country, certainly when I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, it seemed like people didn't believe you could do both.
Right.
Where you could have single family lifestyle,
Yep.
but also have commercial neighborhood nodes.
Absolutely.
Where you can go get a little coffee,
Sure.
a little corner store, stick
Sure.
of butter, half dozen eggs, whatever.
Yep, and they respect the neighbors. They don't have loud events going on at night, and it's a neighborhood restaurant.
And then on the right-hand side, you've got a more an urban village, right? Winter
Yes,
Park.
yes.
You
And
know-
there's residential upstairs on a lot of those commercial buildings.
Right. And the buildings are not tall. They're only
No,
two stories.
2 stories. There
Three
may
max.
be some 3s.
And there's something like when you go to Winter Park and you walk down that street, there's something really familiar and just awesome about walking around. It's urban, but it's not this intense urban area. Again, the buildings are only 2 stories tall, so
Yep.
you have space for air, right? And the breeze and the shaded trees and
trees.
the sidewalk and the big park.
And people watching, which is a big attraction.
People watching.
Yeah.
You know, can you mix a 4-block area like that in a single family neighborhood? I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
It's been done in many fashions.
Oh, it happens all over Florida.
You know, Palma Sia has its own little downtown kind of type deal, right? McDill and Beta Bay.
Yep.
And for a long time, the city's tried to revitalize it
Yeah.
and do something like Winter Park
Yep.
there, like this image where you've got
Yep.
some shops and some restaurants and some
Yep.
shaded trees for pedestrians,
Yep.
nice wide sidewalk. The challenge in Tampa is we've got so many people that use that corridor for travel lanes.
Yes.
And so can you do a road diet there and maintain traffic flow, but also kind of get what we want out of the district? I think everyone wants to see a revitalization of that district.
Yeah. I use that road a lot, obviously, because I live in South Tampa. I've never seen that road overly congested.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
Same with El Prado. I mean, there's several of those roadways that I just never see any congestion on them.
You know, really, it's worse south of there on McDill, like when the academy gets out of
Oh,
school.
yes.
That is where you have some challenges. But
Big
you're
time.
right. In like the general sense, that intersection, you know, it's busy,
Yeah.
but you don't sit there for
No.
20 minutes, right?
No.
Like
Plus, I take Himes. Himes is a better bet during that time of day because my daughter lives 3 houses off of McDill on the west side. Just their lot backs up to Swan right by Four Rivers. So I've learned when not to take McDill, and I'll take Himes.
There is this weird like algorithm that forms in your head. Okay, what time of day is it? Okay, that school's getting out now. Let me take this road. You mentioned property tax bill. Is your daughter a new homeowner?
No.
Because you said she got that property tax bill and
Yeah, my son-in-law.
your son. Okay,
Yeah.
So it's like
it's a big house.
Well, I did the same damn thing last summer. I bought a nice big family home, which comes with a nice big fat property tax bill.
Oh yeah, ours
And
is
I bought
over $1,000 a month where we live.
mine too. And I bought it from a veteran.
Hmm.
So his tax bill was not reflective of what my new one is this year.
Same with us when we bought ours because the previous homeowners were still under the old system apparently.
Sure.
So yeah, our mortgage payment went up $1,000 a month.
I tell you, when you get that property tax bill, you start to notice these broken roads.
Yeah, I got it 2 days ago.
I got mine yesterday.
No, it was yesterday.
What?
Yesterday was Monday.
I
Yeah,
got
mine
my
yesterday.
property tax bill yesterday.
Yep.
And on the way here today to the studio, I'm gripping the steering wheel like, dude, we got to get these roads fixed. I am not paying this money and not having these
My
roads.
Fountain is much worse than McDill.
You know, it's amazing too because those are where the highest property,
yeah.
the most tax
yeah.
dollars
Oh,
out
yeah.
of people's pockets are
Oh,
from these
absolutely.
communities that have the worst roads.
And that's why the counties don't want the cities to be exempt from the counties
That's
from
their
taxing standpoint.
cash pool.
It's
right?
a cash pool, yeah.
So, David, go a little further. We're wrapping this thing up here.
Downtown Orlando.
Yep.
That's Vancouver on the right. And my point being that if you make the downtown work for everybody, people will even let their kids ride in the street, which they do in Baldwin Park.
And so then you've got supports regional trip making.
Yep, exactly.
So this type of not only land development code and development pattern, road design,
Yep.
also supports regional trip making through some of
Absolutely.
these larger transportation initiatives.
Absolutely. When you have compact development patterns. So going back to the funding again, so the funding for Sunrail is being taken over by the local governments because the DOT only operated it for X amount of time, but permanently the cities have to bear the cost. And the city of Orlando had the largest bill related to this. So Limo, the circulator, and Sunrail are both funded by the city, and they have no money to fund it. Because I was there, we had no money in the transportation department.
So what's going to happen to the Sunrail?
They'll have to fund it. They'll have to find a way to fund it somehow. I don't know what they're going to do.
Is it actually moving the needle?
They probably need to go back to the transportation sales tax and not focus so much on transit, but they have to pay for Sunrail.
is it helping traffic alleviation?
Not what it could. The Sunrail I-4 should not have been widened through Orlando. They should have put in Sunrail and let it take care of the congestion.
Because if you widen the highway, why would someone take the train?
Exactly. And there's no, I mean, I-4 through Orlando was never the problem. The problem has always been west of Orlando, from the Disney area through all the way through Poinciana.
So what would be the solution for a city like Orlando that, you can't take the highway up? I guess you could.
let it fail is what they should have done.
Let it fail.
Let it fail.
Wow. So for Orlando to have this obligation of Sunrail,
It's like, I think it was like $17 million a year.
and they don't have the money to pay for it.
Well, the transportation department didn't, so it was going to have to come from general revenue somehow.
That's the fear here.
Mm-hmm.
The fear here I have whenever I put something out on my platform advocating for rail of any sort is how the hell are we going to keep
The
it up and
operation
pay for it?
costs, yep. Brightline, even Brightline needs help. And it's a great system. I've ridden it. It's amazing.
Really?
Oh yeah. And I've ridden transit all over the country, and like Phoenix, their light rail system is very successful. The city of Orlando, not the city of Orlando. So Orlando and Orange County back in the 90s were planning on and had secured funding from Federal Highway to put a light rail system in Orlando. It was going to be mainly going from the city down to the theme parks, which was a horrible idea. But at the last minute, one county commissioner flipped, and the city of Charlotte was next on the New Starts program. They got the funding. All of our planners from the transportation department at the time went to Charlotte and built the system up there. It's amazing.
Wow.
The system in Charlotte is absolutely amazing. And the city has done great things because they had those people that were from Orlando as the planners for the city. I took my staff up there because the person over the transportation department at the city of Charlotte was a friend of mine from Orlando. And I called him. I said, Danny, I'd like to bring my city staff up there. Would you guys be willing to tour us around and show us what you've done? So they dedicated their staff for 2 days to basically show us around. And talking of land development regulations, they had some areas in Charlotte that were, and they've got a whole different personality there because they have so many corporate headquarters that the corporate headquarters are invested in the city's success. But they have corridors that were built suburban sprawl that they're literally retrofitting urban. So, for example, this one area that they took us to, all the sidewalks were like 5 feet wide. As each parcel is redeveloped, they had to put 12-foot sidewalks in.
Wow.
So you'll have a sidewalk that goes from 12 feet to 5 feet, but the redevelopment's happening so fast that they're comfortable that it would be contiguous in a short period of time.
Wow.
Which is very progressive. I mean, that's unusually progressive.
In Charlotte, when you go downtown, there's a really nice, dense buzz there. That's maybe hard to find in other cities.
In most southern cities, yes.
Yeah. And they've got the corporate headquarters thing, which helps support all these initiatives.
Oh, they're so invested, which was really encouraging to hear, but that didn't help us in Orlando.
Right.
Because we didn't have that.
So on this last slide, you talked about Sunrail and then the Tampa streetcar, which I told you before we went on was actually the number 2 most ridden streetcar in the entire country.
Which is
huge
amazing.
Success.
Yep.
Huge success. Now, I would imagine a streetcar is much less intense to operate in terms of cost. Probably the infrastructure is less expensive than a regional rail system.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah. I mean, that's a heavy rail system.
That's a heavy rail system.
It's
where the streetcar,
very different. The infrastructure is significantly more expensive.
So maybe streetcars have a resurgence in this country.
I'm hoping so.
Key West had a streetcar. Pensacola had a streetcar. Orlando,
Tallahassee, Orlando.
St. Pete,
yes, they all.
Tampa had 50 miles of track. So
which is amazing.
are we thinking streetcar is the way American cities can kind of rethink transportation, at least in their urban core?
And streetcars, or if a circulator is well designed, even circulators can be successful, but it has to be well designed.
It has to be
and
well designed.
People feel safe. The circulator in Orlando, there was fundamentally a couple of problems with the circulator with limo. And the problem was that there is no fare. and in Orlando, unlike in Tampa. So the vast majority of the ridership during certain times of day were homeless people and alcoholics. So my wife got on the limo one time and she was so scared. She said, I will never get on limo again. And I used it all the time because I wanted to see what it was like. And I can remember one day I got on it and it was just packed with a bunch of a lot of emotionally disturbed people, to the point that there was almost a fight between two people. And so, yeah, it was uncomfortable. And, so I was talking to Lynx and I said, can't we come up with some way to require a fare, and then for people that have incomes below a certain level, give them either a reduced cost pass or free passes, but there would have to be some kind of pass system. And the executive director of DTO, which is the downtown Orlando, basically focused group part of the city, was on board with that. But the executive director at Lynx at the time was sandbagging us the whole time, so we never got it in place.
Doesn't it make more sense just to enforce some laws? I mean, you're not allowed to just hang out here all day. You're not allowed to drink or do drugs or act up on our transportation system.
The police wouldn't deal with it.
Because
they're spread so thin. They had 24 traffic division officers at one time. When I got there, we had 12. By the time I left, we were down to 7 because of having to use them for school resource officers. People don't want to get tickets, so they complain. So they cut the officers back to 12 from 24. So they don't have enough officers to do what they have to do.
Wow.
So yeah, enforcement was unfortunately not a solution.
Amazing. And so this entire presentation here, you will send to people.
Absolutely.
And so how can people get a hold of you?
My phone number is on the last slide.
Phone number's on the last
slide.
slide.
And email.
Scroll down, David Deco. What do we got? So, Billy, your phone number is 407-608-8368.
It's my cell phone. Even when I was secretary, that's all I used. I refused to carry a state cell phone because I want people to reach me.
Wow. Well, be respectful, people listening, if you're going to contact Billy. And then your email is hattawayb@etminc.com.
Correct.
So etminc.com.
Correct.
Hattaway is hattawayb@etminc.com.
Correct.
Billy, I appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you for the invite. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Keep up the good work.
Well, you too, sir. I mean, for 50 years in your field and continuing to push the envelope and certainly speaking out in a culture that is against a lot of these ideas for many different reasons.
Oh, yeah. Still.
And
certain parts of the state.
Certain parts of the state, maybe now more so than even 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah, because they've got the governor's support.
And you've kept this North Star. What I'm gathering from you in this conversation is you really have had a vision for a better way of life. It doesn't mean our way of life changes. It just means
providing another choice
in
for where people live,
gathering ideas across the decades and refining them.
Yep, absolutely. And learning from mistakes.
Billy
There were things that we did, and I don't do this for the money. I could retire financially, but it's important work that I care about, and I'm heavily invested as long as I'm healthy, and I work on that by riding 100 miles a week and strength training.
On Bayshore and on Davis Islands, it sounds like.
Yes, yeah.
And also too, this conversation gives me optimism about the future, because some days I look around and I think, God, we've got a long way to go. But talking with you today and some of these statistics you've gone over and how we've improved and our roads are more safe here in Florida because of your efforts and FDOT and everything you're doing, it gives me hope. I look at this whole thing and I think 10, 20 years down the line, because you've implemented complete streets and these relationships with local governments with the Land Development Code.
Correct.
Man, you play that out over a decade or 2 decades in Florida, and we're looking at a good path forward.
Yeah, and I'm fortunate that I work for a firm that wanted me to come in and educate our own people and educate our client base to do things differently, because the CEO believes in this work.
And ETM has how many employees in the Tampa
We're
Bay
right.
area?
We've got 4 of us here. We expect to have 20 within the next 2 years.
Amazing. Well, Billy, thanks again. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks again.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody.